Yeah, the beginning is the part that I'm just kind of like, oh, and
Well,
then
it's like the beginning of horror movies, though, because you never know what you're in for. Whenever you actually press play and you start watching it, it could turn into anything. It could be the next Friday the 13th, or it could be, Prom Night 2, Hello, Mary Lou. We never know what we're in for when we first watch the movie.
I feel like we're in for Prom Night 2, Hello, Mary Lou. I feel like that's our lead-in. I think we can go off of this.
That sounds pretty good.
Hi, this is Nathan Basil, aka Leslie Vernon, and you are listening to The Knife Shift.
Hey, it's Alex Vincent, Andy Barkley from the Chucky franchise. You're listening to the Knife Shift podcast. Keep listening, or these guys will kill you.
Hey guys, this is the Knife Shift podcast.
Yep, and I'm Jesse here.
I'm Jonas.
And as always, we make a Weezer reference there, and then we continue on with the podcast.
My name doesn't always have to be a Weezer reference.
If your name always has to be Jonas, then...
Well, maybe I should be going to the courthouse and getting a new one. But for now, let's just go on with... This was our plan for podcast number 2. We wanted you guys, the few fans we have so far, the couple of subscribers, what are we up to, 12 or so on YouTube?
Yeah, look, it sounds cliche, but I'm being genuine. I'm impressed with the amount of people that have followed us. Even you 12 people out there, and like we're at like 50 views on our podcast.
I didn't check it today, but yeah, I think the last time I looked, it was somewhere around 50.
We posted one video, and I know there's people that post videos and they get like thousands of views overnight. Look, I'm impressed.
It's a long road to get to that point.
We posted one video, and that we have any followers blows my mind.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So,
thank you guys. So basically what we wanted to do with number 2 here is we wanted to go through the roots of what led us to horror, and we're going to be talking about first off, do you want to start with our list?
What I want to start with is, I'm glad you asked me, because I'm just eating this up. No, I wanted to ask you, why horror?
That is a really good question. I think a lot of people have posed that in a lot of documentaries. But for me, I know I can't be the first person to have this answer, but I think it really has to do with the times that we live in. It's a lot easier to get through the day when you see something scary on the screen, and it can distract you from the terrors of real life. Be it, some horrible super virus that we won't name that's going around right now, or, an election with horrible people that nobody wants to vote for. It's all a horror show, man. And if we can just get a little distraction from that and just come together and just see... the movie ends. The movie ends, and 9 times out of 10, the good guys win. And I think that's a good moral for life. You can have a happy ending coming from blood and guts and monsters.
And even on a more basic level than that, I agree with what you're saying. It's about survival. Like, yeah. even like you're saying, we have all this big horror show going on outside of our house, outside of our TV screen. And it's like what that movie is saying to us is, hey, you could be these guys. You could be getting terrorized by this guy with a machete, but guess what? You're safe in your house. And then when you turn off the movie, it's like things aren't that bad.
The worst thing you got to worry about is pulling the popcorn out of the seat cushions of your own house because you're not at the movie theater. Yeah.
Is that your answer?
That would definitely be my take on it.
Okay. We had a brief discussion about it the other day at work. I didn't want to go too in depth about it because once we started talking about it,
you were already plotting this.
I was like, you know what? I'll save it for the podcast. But we were talking about Jurassic Park. You had walked up to me and just out of nowhere, you were like, you're like, you know what, Jesse? What is your what's your favorite Jurassic Park movie? And I said something like, you said, what's the best Jurassic Park movie?
Yeah.
And I said, like, the best is in well done or the best as in like the most enjoyable to me, because they're two different answers. But regardless of that, it got us talking, and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I loved dinosaurs as a kid, and only in that moment when we were talking about it, I had always told people, like, I think Jurassic Park was my gateway into horror films, because they're monster movies. The monsters are dinosaurs, and they're trying to eat people, and they're trying to get away, and I think that was my gateway into horror. But only in that moment when we were talking did it click in my brain that it went back further than that. Because, like, even before Jurassic Park, I always loved dinosaurs. And I'm just like, we were talking about it. I'm like, why do we love dinosaurs? You said you liked dinosaurs too when you were a kid.
Yeah, one of the first books that I ever had read to me by my mother was actually like a rhymey kind of children's book that had to do with dinosaurs. And I wish I could remember some of them. I'm going to have to look for this book now, because one of them I remember I had her read it to me over and over because I thought it was so funny, and it was about Allosaurus.
Yeah.
But I remember it was just because they were saying his brain size was so small, and little me just thought it was hilarious that this big dinosaur was dumb as a box of rocks. But yeah, it was like that is really true. It's one of those, it's almost like well, it's not almost like, it's definitely where probably the dragon myth came from, is just, something having to do with dinosaurs, like this gigantic, huge toothed beast that does kind of resemble a lot of monsters in horror movies.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
So, like, even if they don't resemble the monsters, just the idea of this giant creature that's terrifying, like, why would that captivate anybody if not horror? To be scared. Or
But then you go and tell somebody that you think Jurassic Park is a horror movie, and they're like, no, it's a action movie.
I always kind of snickered at the idea that, like, because my parents were so, like, so my parents were separated. I lived with my dad. So when I say my parents, because my mom's more lenient. My dad and my stepmom, they're really religious. And they were always so against horror movies. And I always kind of wondered, what makes one thing okay and the other not okay? And specifically, to fit our conversation, Jurassic Park. Like, that's a movie
really thin line
about people that they recreate dinosaurs, and then the dinosaurs escape, and they're trying to survive, but these dinosaurs are eating them, and it's big, scary lizards. And what makes that movie okay to watch in the eyes of someone that hates horror films, and then something like Tremors, or I'll use one that's more horror that won't be, oh, well, that's not a horror either.
I was going to say Jaws.
What makes Jaws a horror movie and Jurassic Park not a horror movie?
My initial thought on that is production value.
For its value
in Jaws, yeah, for its time, it was pretty substantial, because it was Steven Spielberg, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Spielberg made Jaws. And if that's the case, then, I mean, Spielberg also made Jurassic Park, which was almost like land Jaws years later.
Yeah, I don't get it. And you're saying production value. I hardly think production value changes genre. But like, let's speak from the context of someone who morally disagrees with horror films. So it's like, why is Jaws not okay, but Jurassic Park is?
Maybe it has something to do with the critics saying in unison that a movie is more for everybody. Like, it's a blockbuster. Whenever you hear the term blockbuster, I've never heard it referred to in the sense of a horror movie. Like, it's always just been, if you want to say summer blockbuster or something, it's an action movie. It's a war movie. Sometimes it's even like a rom-com somehow becomes a blockbuster. But, I mean, if it has been like one or two of them, maybe Freddy vs. Jason, because I remember that was like huge when that one came out. But I can't really think of another one offhand. But maybe there's a few other criteria there.
I don't know. I mean, we don't have to figure it out on here, but I guess the point being, I just wanted, it's something that something that I think about, and I wonder if anyone else thinks about. And it's like, you know, there's a thin line there. It's kind of like, I don't want to get too off track, but I also, in the same context of having like a dad that was really religious and like trying to stay on that, like I was an emo kid in school, and if he caught me listening to any music with screaming in it, it was like, that's the devil's music right there. That sounds like the devil. And it's
you know
like,
what happens when you buy the ticket for that show? You sell your soul straight to the devil.
And I always was like, okay, so if you change the pitch of your voice and like make a certain sound with your throat, then that means that you're satanic. And there was one day where I thought I was clever. I was probably a little brat. I was listening to Under Oath and he said it, and I'm like, well, you know, this is a Christian band, right? And he didn't have anything to say. And I'm just like what? Where is the line there? Like, what makes it okay and not okay? And I don't know. I wanted to bring that up. It was something that I thought would be fun to talk about. We can move on if you got your...
I would say sound off in the comments if you can exactly define to us why Jurassic Park would be completely okay for a family to go to see. What? You know, I went and saw that movie. God, that came out in 96, I want to say.
Don't ask me that.
I want to say it was 96.
Yeah.
Which would put me at a whopping 12 years old, and I got to go see that in the theater, even though it was PG-13, I believe that one was. So it wasn't exactly terrifying, but I remember as a kid there were some scenes where I was like, holy crap, like when the T-Rex eats... I forget
the guy
what the
on the
lawyer's
toilet.
name. It was the lawyer. So
yeah.
Nobody was like, oh, great loss there. The lawyer died.
Well, that's even more messed up. Like, oh, it's okay, kids. He's a lawyer.
That's the longest running joke ever, is everybody just like, oh, what's the worst thing ever? Mosquitoes and lawyers. Like, everybody hates a lawyer, so when we see him get it, everyone's just like, yeah, okay, as long as nobody else dies.
I do want to bring up, I don't know how I got it. Back in the primitive VHS tape days, you know, I was, just for the record, I was born in 90, guys. So yeah, you're gonna get the, oh, like when I was young, and then you're like, that wasn't that long ago. I'm just putting that out there. There's a film. I really want to know if anyone's heard of this film or seen it. There was a film called Planet of the Dinosaurs, and it was, I was a kid, so I didn't have any sense of like B movie or what. It was just a movie about dinosaurs, and that's all I knew. And I loved it. It was like this crew, they're out in space, and they land on this planet that's inhabited by dinosaurs. And,
was it like a stop motion animation?
I think so, yeah.
Man,
yeah.
That sounds really familiar.
That was another one that I really loved dinosaurs, and I must have liked horror and didn't know it, because there's no way I was this into these movies and like didn't like that. But it was essentially, more so than Jurassic Park, it was essentially a monster flick. These characters are just trying to settle, they crash land on this planet that's inhabited by dinosaurs, and they're trying to survive, and they keep getting picked off. And that was like, I think there's a giant tarantula at some point.
You know, it's making me think, the whole stop motion thing, of another movie that I didn't even put on my notes and stuff for this podcast, but when we were talking about getting into horror, the Harryhausen flicks. I'm sure you probably haven't watched them yet, but there was a couple of movies made, well, not a couple, he made a lot of movies, but there was a stop motion animator named Ray Harryhausen that pretty much pioneered the modern stop motion animation. And he made some movies like Sinbad and, God, what was the other one? Clash of the Titans, the original Clash of the Titans. That was his stop motion skeletons fighting with, like, whenever you see that clip or that GIF or GIF, whatever you want to call it.
GIF.
Oh, God.
The peanut butter.
Whenever you see that somewhere, the skeletons fighting the Roman guy, that's Harryhausen's work. And I think, like, man, I must have watched that when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And maybe that had a lot to do with the whole horror thing, too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it could be. There's a lot of scary stuff in Greek mythology. Like, I think
Oh, Medusa was in those movies, too.
Yeah.
And she's terrifying.
I think that the Disney version of Hercules is probably the most... it's probably the creepiest Disney movie that exists or had existed for quite some time. So like you get into that Greek mythology and yeah, things get weird. Even in the Disney version. If you want to start on favorite movies, we can go there.
All right. Do you want to? We'll trade off 1-to-1. Like
sure,
I'll read one,
yeah.
you read one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk before we do favorite movies.
Okay.
Let's actually talk about movies that we grew up watching. So like maybe they're not the best movies, regardless of what people think. What are the horror movies that you liked as a kid or that you grew up watching that kind of created your taste?
Oh man, this almost falls under the underrated category for me, but I'll save that one for a little bit later. But I would say probably a lot of the really early ones, like Nosferatu, the silent film. That was one of the first horror, like actual horror movies that I ever saw, and that was because of one of my aunts knew that I liked like dinosaurs and scary things, so she got me, I think it was like maybe her VHS copy of the movie, and I got to watch it, and I would never get the image of that vampire guy out of my mind, because that is one of the creepiest images of any vampire ever. Like, if you watch the it was a movie that was made about the movie in a fictionalized sense years later called Shadow of the Vampire. It has Willem Dafoe and John Malkovich. Good movie. But even Willem Dafoe, as creepy as he can be, did not hold a candle to Max Schreck in the original German silent film. I urge anyone that has not watched this film, you can find it. It's in the public domain. It's probably on YouTube. You can look it up after you listen to this if you wanted to, or pause this and go watch that and come back. Yeah, other than the Nosferatu, I did watch a couple of the early Universal films, but I didn't watch a lot of them. I know a lot of people aren't into the black and white stuff, but it does have something to offer because it's where it all started.
Yeah.
You can see where they got all the tropes for stuff later, how they designed their sets and everything. It all dates back to something from like the 60s or 50s. But yeah, eventually I did get into some oddball stuff that would really flavor my movie watching habits. A lot of it came from Trauma. I know I still haven't got you to sit down and watch a Trauma film yet.
I really don't want to. I really don't want to watch a Trauma film.
They're not that... Okay, there's some of them that are that bad. But if you just sit down and watch, like, The Toxic Avenger, it is great. It is totally a B-movie, but it's worth it. If you can... Okay, you're one of the guys that first, when I said something about Tommy Wiseau, you're like, oh, yeah, and then you started... going into the, oh, hi, Mark. You start going into that spiel.
It's human behavior.
See? And you can't get into a Trauma movie is laughable because they are better produced than The Room.
It's not about production. It's about... I don't like disturbing imagery. I hate it. It's weird. I love horror. Okay, I should be more specific. Because as I said last time, I think that Ju-on from The Grudge, I think that's terrifying, and I like that.
What about disturbing as in like
as in gore,
okay.
like deformities, like
you were gonna hate my list then.
I really, you were talking about trying to get me to watch Basket Case, and I'm like, that sounds like one of the worst things for me to ever have to sit through. Like, I really don't want to go there.
We'll get into that later.
But, I mean, to each their own, you know? We might have different tastes, but,
Well, speaking of our different tastes, what's your back in the day movies?
So, I'm pretty sure that I have some of my movies that are favorites, or, like, maybe not favorites, but movies I grew up on that I used to love. I'm pretty sure there's some of the lowest
like
Rotten Tomato scores that you've ever seen in the horror genre. So please try not to judge me. I know it's there, but you know, we're gonna go there. We're gonna talk about it. the first thing is I grew up in the age of, I don't know what you would call it, like the Asian horror in America, kind of like the Asian remakes that were being done by American studios. So you had like The Grudge, The Ring, Dark Water, Pulse.
I remember Dark Water. That one was pretty bad. I gotta say, but that's again my opinion. Doesn't mean the movie sucks.
That's Pulse and One Missed Call. Like all of those were movies that were Asian films that were being brought over.
And 9 times out of 10, the Asian version was better.
I didn't see that. And like, it's weird to say because I love horror, and I'll sit here and I'll be like, I'm so desensitized by all this that barely anything scares me. But somehow I'm too scared to watch Ju-on or like the original Asian horror films. So I don't know if part of it's because I'm actually afraid of being scared, or if part of it is I'm afraid that if I watch them thinking these are going to be so scary, I'm actually going to watch it and be like, oh, so the originals weren't scary either.
Now, I know you say that about, like, actual gore and disturbing imagery is something that you really don't want to see. But I'll tell you, with most movies that I go into thinking it's going to be that, it doesn't live up to the hype.
Yeah.
Like, there was a film that everyone had been telling me for a long time. It's just like, oh, this is like the top of Mount Gross Out. If you can sit through this one, you can sit through anything. It was Brian Yuzna's Society. And some of you out there have probably seen the film.
I recall you mentioning it.
I didn't think it was that bad. There were parts of it that were disturbing.
Risque.
I mean, I would be able to say with 100% confidence that people would call it downright raunchy. But I have seen worse. And from movies that nobody warned me about, that I just found.
But does that make it okay?
For most people, no. If we were talking about, are most people going to run out and want to watch Society, I would say no.
Did you like it?
I liked it. Well, I had to like it because I bought it on Blu-ray.
You don't have to like it.
I bought the damn thing, so I have to like it. It's in my collection. I don't love Nightmare Weekend. Deep cut right there for anybody that knows what that movie is. But I bought it at the Troma booth, so now I have to like it.
So you're just like forcing a smile. This movie.
When you see a hand puppet taking control of a computer program to kill somebody, yeah, you're like, well, there's my $25. It went straight to this scene right here.
And that's great. Like I want to clarify. I don't think The Ring is scary. I probably thought it was a little bit when it came out, but it's been it's had like 2 sequels, and it's been parodied in Scary Movie 3.
It's been
and
done.
Like I don't think that The Ring is scary. I don't think that most of those movies. I thought Dark Water was a little boring.
Yeah.
And that's the one about the little girl or like somebody in a hotel it's weird. It kind of mirrors that real life situation where the person was
but
dumped
this came
in
out before that, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And it was a remake, but it was the kid was the body was left in the water tank, so the whole hotel or apartment or whatever it was kind of being possessed by the spirit.
I don't know if we just made that connection and nobody else has, but any true crime detectives out there you go. Maybe look into that case through the lens of the Dark Water movie, and maybe you'll gain some new insights. I don't know.
Yeah, I always thought that was kind of weird, but I think for some reason, I don't know why, I think The Grudge is... I like odd. I like that doesn't make sense. I don't like gross. Like, ew. I don't like cockroaches and, like, mangled faces. I like your body shouldn't be able to twist like that. Like, why is this person crawling upside down? And, like physics. I love when physics don't make sense in movies. And I know a lot of people hated the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I actually, while I think that it lacked creativity, I think if you're going to do a movie about dream sequences, you need to be imaginative and you're in a dream. You can do anything. Don't be boring with it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I didn't mind the remake. I liked the casting that they did, and I know a lot of people. I saw I'm gonna butcher his name. He's got 3 names, and it's Jackie Earl Haley.
Yeah.
I saw him at the Watchmen reunion at Horror Hound that I mentioned last time.
Yeah,
and
I saw the picture. Yeah.
They asked everyone if they had any, like, I don't know if they asked them if they had any regrets or any fears or anything. And most of them were like, no, like, we're good. And Jackie Earl Haley's like, I have this one reoccurring nightmare that I'm sleeping in my bed, and there's this figure that towers over me, and it's Robert Englund, and he's trying to get me. And that was pretty funny. But yeah, I don't have a big grudge against the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Real quick, I was just gonna say Jackie Earl Haley in the series that I need to get you to watch yet, Preacher.
Yeah,
he plays an awesome character.
He's in it.
In the first season, he is one of the best like villain kind of characters.
Yeah,
you'll see.
Okay,
I'll
cool.
leave it at that.
Yeah, nice. I didn't know he was in that, but yeah, I liked him. A lot of people had a problem with him being outed as a pedophile in the remake.
Right.
I'm like, you don't really, because in Nightmare 1, he licks Nancy, an underage kid, through the phone and says, I'm your boyfriend now. And he, like, his glove comes up between her open legs in a bathtub. It's like, you guys didn't get that?
It was so funny. I bought a, what was it, Friday, or, it was Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy Deluxe NECA figure that they just released not that long ago. And I was sharing it online to some people, and I got some pushback just because it's just like, oh, well, it's an evil pedophile. We can't have an action figure of him. Like, it's Freddy Krueger.
He's iconic.
Yeah, it's an iconic character. Why
was it?
I?
Was it the original or was it the remake version?
It was the original version.
Okay, so there are people that are like, no, like, it doesn't matter what version.
People were arguing online about that, saying like, no, that's not an OG Freddy. OG Freddy just killed people. He didn't do any of that kind of stuff.
He was
like,
a pervert.
I wasn't even gonna delve into it. I just got out of there.
Jesse Elliott here with the Knife Shift, and I am stating my firm opinion. Like, you pick up, just because they never said it, you pick up on those clues. I am stating he was always a pedophile. I think it's just the sequels, they took it in less of a dark and more of a comedic route. And because of that, people started liking the character, and then it became lighter as it progressed. And Wes Craven picked it back up with New Nightmare, which I think is my favorite Nightmare film.
I need to give it a rewatch. It's been a couple of years.
And it takes it back down to dark again.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, you can tell that Wes's initial intentions were to have it dark. And, obviously Robert Englund stuck it out and he played Freddy in all these. So, like, I don't want to, bash on the character itself. But, like, it was, the original intention was to be dark. And I think because they made it lighter in the following films, it's kind of like a blurry line of like, oh, we kind of like this guy, but why is it okay if he's... I don't want to go on this route, but why is it okay if he's killing people, but not okay if he's touching kids?
I think that goes
Neither
back,
one is cool.
It's not, but really it goes back to just American Puritanism. It goes back to why violence is okay on TV, but if you see a nipple, then, on the Super Bowl with Janet Jackson, people lose their shit. I don't know why, but it's always been violence is okay. But if you talk about sex at all, be it illegal or legal, that's horrible. We can't be doing that. But I mean, I would also state that, they never outright said anything about Leatherface doing anything with the bodies of the females after they were dead. But I'm going to put it out there.
Is that a thing? Or you just...
I'm just theorizing here. I'm just spitballing that, it could be possible.
I feel like this is fan fiction.
I mean, he could have been playing with his food. I don't know.
Were there any actual context clues left by the director or anything that's what he was doing? Or is that just like this could have happened?
No, but if they could make lamps and chandeliers and all kinds of other things out of their victims.
But that's what the real guy did.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about Ed Gein, and
Yeah.
he wasn't even a serial killer. He killed what, like 1 or 2 people maybe. And
I don't know.
He
I'm
robbed
not...
a bunch of graves, and he was the inspiration
right
for Texas Chainsaw, and he was the inspiration for Buffalo Bill.
Right. Yeah.
In Silence of the Lambs, because he did have a woman suit that he almost did the exact same thing that Ed Gein did. So, yeah, I could see that. That's actually, if you want me to, it'll lead me right into my top one of my top 5 horror films.
Well, I just wanted to say, there are some. I'm not going into it. There are some terrible recent Texas Chainsaw films. Please, guys, just bring it. Just do it right.
If you're gonna do it, it's like that. It hurts me every time they put out a new one of those, and I just know it's gonna be shit again. Because it's like, if you were in my shoes, it would be if they put out Scream 5 and it was just a B movie completely, like there were there was just a killer using a gun.
It's kind of like the Scream TV series was.
Yeah.
Like it was, they had the Scream title,
I didn't
but
watch
they had a different
one.
mask, and it was very teen drama-esque. It was very like Riverdale kind
I'll
of
just watch
like
Scream Queens if I want to watch something like that.
But Scream Queens isn't serious in the slightest. It's a big
That's why I watch
joke.
it.
which is what makes it good. I watched the first episode or 2 of Scream the TV series, and I love Scream, and I could not do it. And
that says a lot for you.
It makes which is funny though, because when we did the Scream reunion, which I seem to be bringing up a lot apparently, but at the panel, because most of the cast was there, and they reflected on Wes Craven a bit, and they talked about how when that series was announced and they were going to do that series, somebody asked them if they ever watched it or like how they felt about it, and everybody was just like, nope. Nope, like not going there. Like none of them were happy with that series. But it was
even okay by Wes Craven had passed.
I think Wes Craven was going to direct the pilot, but then it went in a different route, and I don't think he did.
Did he even give it his blessing or anything?
I think he did, but I think his intentions were that it was going to be something different than what it actually ended up being.
Somebody fact check us on that one.
I know that
I would like to know.
I know that Wes Craven was alive, because the story I'm telling here, they were talking about Wes Craven's reaction to the pilot and stuff. He was talking to them about it, and they're like, "Oh, like we're gonna decapitate this person." They were mentioning decapitations are hard in horror films because you know what? The head always wants to bounce. Like that's why I don't do decapitations. And they're like, there it is, first episode. They're out by a pool, and wouldn't you know it, decapitations. Girl gets beheaded, and they're like, Wes is watching. They're like, yep, there it is. The head bounces, just like he said. Like it was.
There have been like 2 or 3 horror movies that I can think of, or at least the scenes that I can think of, where there's a decapitation and then just like a wet thud and no bounce. Like they got it like just right.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just a hard thing to do because whatever material they're making those fake heads out of.
Right.
Whenever they hit the ground, they just start rolling like a volleyball or something.
Yeah. They want to, they're not heavy enough or what? I don't know. They want to bounce. I just want to go back a little bit to movies that I watched when I was younger. I mentioned the Asian horror. A big one was Darkness Falls. I don't know if you ever saw that. The Tooth Fairy one.
Yeah.
I don't know how that was received. I'm assuming because it was about the Tooth Fairy, a lot of people hated it.
I think that's why they named it Darkness Falls, because if they would have named it like the Tooth Fairy, I don't think anyone would have went to see it.
I think there is a B movie. Maybe it's ripping off of Darkness Falls. I don't know. I think it's just called The Tooth Fairy.
It could be.
Because I've seen the cover and I'm like, that looks cringy.
What year did that have? I know I'm getting off topic again now, but when did that start where as soon as there was a movie that did the least amount of money at the box office, they could have just made like, 5 million or 10 million, and instantly 2 weeks later there's a B movie ripoff that is almost the same title that is straight to DVD, confusing everyone at the video store with which movie is which.
I think that evolved with the ability to be able to make movies easier, like that. So maybe with technology or computers, as that progressed.
It makes sense. But
Yeah.
I remember when I worked at a video store for a little while. Yeah, that was an awesome job. But when I worked at the video store, I would be stocking some of those, and I'd be like, man, this is criminal. We were just getting people to rent absolute garbage just because it has a similar name to something else that came out.
Yeah, that's rough. So yeah, Darkness Falls was one of my favorites. We had a friend, my brother and I had a friend, and he was like the biggest baby when it came to horror films and stuff. He would not watch them, and he had this particular fear of the film Darkness Falls. And Justin and I had seen it several times. We're desensitized by it, like it doesn't scare us. I remember, it's so mean, but I remember this one day we tricked him into going out there. It was like the final scene of the movie, and they did the classic horror, like, oh, the killer's dead, but they're not really dead. They're going to come back for one last scare. And we're like, oh, don't worry, Dakota, it's over. Like, they killed it, see? And it's like all like the music lightens up, and it's like, oh, it's over. And so he's like, okay. And he's out there, and then it comes back, and it's all like, and it's just like the porcelain mask is gone. It's the full face, and he was so mad. But it was like, it was so worth it just for that memory. That's something that we'll still bring up to him today. Like, remember when Darkness Falls? And we'd give him a hard time because he would never admit that it was scary. He would always say, it's weird. That's weird. I don't want to watch it. That movie's weird. And so it's like...
He had nightmares for a year after that one, probably.
He was the same age as us. It's not like... But yeah, he's still a good friend today. But that was just something that I wanted to share.
You know what film pulled that off the best?
What?
We watched it not that long ago. Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Part 1. That final shot, one of the final shots of her in the canoe.
Yeah.
And just that perfect peaceful music floating on the water and just just touching the water and everything's okay. Then just Jason comes out of the water.
I hate that, by the way. I hate when movies do that. It's...
You just never know if a movie is truly ending on a positive note or if they're just about to go, psych!
Doug, don't be cheap. Come on. But there's another one that I'm pretty sure, unlike Darkness Falls where I don't know, I'm pretty sure everyone hated this movie. I loved it. It was called Boogeyman.
I don't think I watched that one.
It had one of the guys from Sorority Boys in it, which I don't know. You guys know that's a comedy. It has Michael Rosenbaum and I don't know the other guy's name, but it was one of the main three actors from Sorority Boys, and it was a horror film. And this kid, like as a kid, the boogeyman killed one of his parents or something, and so it's like he's an adult now, but he's kind of messed up from it.
No, I didn't see this movie, but it was the setup for the parent's death. Like the kid said, there's like, oh, the boogeyman's in my room, and their parent goes to check it out and then gets killed.
Yeah,
that's instantly what I'm thinking is probably happening in this movie.
Something like that. Yeah, like there's something in the closet, and it's like, no, like what do you? And then it's really in the closet. Like that was a good one for me. And then
man, that boogeyman is just always in the closet. He needs to just come out already. I mean, it's 2020. People are okay. They're accepting with things now. You can come out of that closet. Yeah, you know where I was going.
Yeah, that's cool. So a lot of the other ones I'll talk about. So why don't we get on with it? And
okay.
Yeah, go ahead and start us off with your.
Yeah, we're going on now to. We gave ourselves not really much of a challenge, but we gave ourselves an idea to do our top 5 horror films. And we're gonna do them in at least mine are in no particular order. I'm not going
Yeah,
top 5,
right.
best to worst, or worst to best. They're mixed up, and that's kind of what they should be for me. I mean, I know we might talk about our favorite film later, and we had an idea on that. And...
Well, you know what? Let's do that. Let's do that now.
Okay.
Sorry to jump around, guys. We're still getting this down. But so what's your favorite movie of all time?
If I really had gun to the head, I had to pick one. I'm gonna have to go with 7.
7. Okay.
7.
Cool.
David Fincher directed, Brad Pitt, and of course the creepiest man alive at this point,
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey.
Oh my gosh, he is
People-
creepy.
Yes, I know your girlfriend has said before that she had a theory that Kevin Spacey was always just John Doe and was never actually playing a character at all in that movie.
Yeah, like the kids nowadays are gonna grow up and be like, "Why is that creepy guy in this movie?"
But you know, there's a lot of awesome things about that movie. For one, Kevin Spacey fought to get his name removed from the opening credits.
Dang.
Because if you saw his name in the opening credits, by the process of elimination halfway
Right.
through the movie, you would know Kevin Spacey was the... Yeah,
Right.
Spoilers, guys. We're talking about a movie from 1997.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, but yeah, Kevin Spacey was John Doe.
Yeah,
And his name didn't appear in the credits until
That's
the
great.
end of the movie.
that's great. I love that, and that he was willing to do that. Nowadays, it would be plastered everywhere. You wouldn't get away with that.
No, it's super hard to do something like that nowadays.
So, like, how, if at all, how do you think 7 relates to horror?
Well, it's already really close to almost being a horror movie.
Yeah.
But I think the focus on the hunt for the killer rather than
The kills itself.
focusing on his aftermath, that's what makes it more of like a thriller, mystery, crime film. And it's like David Fincher had some great ideas for this movie that could have pushed it even further. But he was fighting with the studio so much on so many different aspects of the film. Like from the opening credits all the way to the end credits, there were things that they like fought about until like release day.
Yeah.
That it had to go this way or it couldn't get released.
Dang.
And David Fincher was right there saying the same thing. Like, you do it this way or I'm taking my name off the damn thing. And one of the big things that he fought for was the opening credits. Have you watched
Yeah.
7? Okay, the opening credits are pretty disturbing. It has some weird imagery in there, almost like some medical kind of stuff going on.
Oh, I hate that.
And they wanted a completely different opening that was like sanitized.
Yeah.
And he's like, nope, this is the version you're getting.
It's like the Mindhunter opening for the series Mindhunter. I
yeah.
cannot watch it.
Yeah,
it's
disturbing.
I'm subjecting my brain to disturbing subliminal imagery, and I'm not gonna do it, and I'll skip it. That's the only intro I ever skip.
And I'll forgive you for that one too, because I'm betting a lot of people got like turned off the show
Think so?
because of that opening. Yeah. But, you know, a lot of people also aren't quick enough to notice stuff like that. It's just flashes to them. I don't think they focus on that kind of stuff. Maybe by episode 7 or 8, they're like, is that a dead body?
I
Maybe
don't know.
I don't know. But the other thing I really wanted to say about why it's so close to horror and why it's so awesome, the ending. And I know, major spoilers here again for anybody that hasn't seen the movie, but Gwyneth Paltrow's character is killed in a horrible way, and for it to go down the way it did with her head in the box at the end of that movie, that's another thing David Fincher had to really fight for, because the studio wanted it to be their dog's head.
Yeah, that is not
That
the
would have
same.
been horrible. That would have
Yeah.
been like, oh no, my prized dog.
The dog lovers would be upset, and then
Oh, PETA would have been furious, I'm sure.
what? Like they really do it? No,
They
like
gotta go for that realism. No, but
Yeah.
you know, you never. This is a common misconception. You never see her head. There's a lot of people that say like, oh, you can see her hair kind of coming out of the box. No, you don't see any part of the head ever in the box. It's always just implied.
dang.
But no, the studio wanted to change that ending too, and that ending would have been horrible. But thank God David Fincher will fight for his films and made that one into what it is. And if he hadn't, I mean, I can't imagine what films would be like for me to watch nowadays if David Fincher wasn't there to fight for that kind of stuff. Everyone would just bend over to the studios and do whatever they wanted, or else they think, oh no, well, they got David Fincher to change his movie, I better do it too.
Yeah, that was a big issue with Scream as well, was trying to get the studio to let him make the movie he wanted to make.
Yeah, with that opening scene, they had a lot of cuts.
The thing I recall is you saw like the intestines coming out of the boyfriend on the patio.
Yep.
And they talked about how that wasn't okay, and they're like, why isn't this okay? Well, because gravity, you see it falling out, moving. That's the weirdest thing to dwell on. Like, oh, it's not okay because you see gravity is pulling it out.
The MPAA is weird like that. Yeah. I mean, Evil Dead 2, which I'll talk about something with that later, but they had changed the color of the blood in a bunch of scenes. They had green and red and purple and just different colors in an attempt to get the MPA to let them squeak by with an R rating because the blood would be different colors.
Yeah.
The first print was still rated X.
Yeah, that's
They
nuts.
still couldn't get an R rating, so they had to chop the film down even more.
Yeah. I remember Wes said that the way the Scream finally made it past the rating system, or the what is it?
MPAA.
Yeah, I won't remember that right. So the way that he got the movie accepted was he called them up after having to revisit it several times, and he was getting frustrated, and he's like, what's the problem here? And they're like, they think that the movie's too dark. So he told them it's a comedy. Tell them that the movie is a comedy. And then it got through.
That is kind of hilarious because there are so many aspects of the movie that are comedic.
Right.
So it kind of works.
It's the light of the person that watches it and how it's like there's a movie called Funny Games, and some people watch that movie and think it's the most horrific thing, and it was probably intended that way. My brother and I will watch that movie, and the way that I watch it is like it's a comedy. I don't know why,
I don't know how you could watch it as not a comedy and watch it. If you were just watching it as a straight movie and just like, oh, this is horrible. I mean, you gotta get a couple of laughs out of it here and there, or else you're just like, it's worse than, oh God, what's that movie? Requiem for a Dream.
Oh my gosh.
Try to watch that and just like, oh, everybody's dead at the end, or wishes they were.
Yeah, like it's got really dark moments, but it's the two guys that break in, and the American version's the one that I watch the most. I have seen both because it's a shot-for-shot remake.
Yeah, it's done, pretty much the exact same thing.
It's done by the same guy, but Michael Pitt's in the American version, and like they toy with the audience and they'll look at the camera and break fourth wall, and at one point they rewind what happened and undo it, and like I think that it's funny, and I hope that doesn't make me a sicko. But I think that it's in the light of, and you know, there's people that will watch Friday the 13th movies and they think it's funny because it's like levels of cheese, and that cracks them up. And then there's people that think it's scary and are like, why are you laughing at this?
When you get to the part in A New Blood that where it's basically Carrie versus Jason, yeah, that's hilarious. I mean, it's bad in all the best ways, so it makes it worth watching. I mean, I know people hate Jason X, but that movie is so damn funny.
It's so bad.
That's showing people that so bad it's good is a reality.
What happened with that? So it's the Super Bowl, and as you may guess, I am not into sports in any way, shape, or form. McDonald's was doing 50-piece nuggets for really cheap to support, or like to go with the Super Bowl, and some friends and I, my girlfriend at the time, and there were like 4 or 5 of us. We got a couple 50-piece nuggets and rented a couple movies, and we're like, we're gonna go back and have a movie night and eat chicken nuggets instead of the Super Bowl, and we're gonna have ourselves a good time. And what happened was, we rented Jason X, not knowing what we were in for. We weren't educated in these films at the time, and we're like, let's pick up some scary movies. We picked up Jason X, Wrong Turn 3.
Oh, God.
I don't remember what the third movie was, but I can tell you that it was not good because we rented 3 movies and they were all really bad. And
Possibly
we had
Leprechaun in Space.
We did not rent Leprechaun in Space. It was Leprechaun in the Hood.
Oh,
no.
I haven't even watched that one.
No, it wasn't. But like, we rented the worst movies possible without knowing it, and we watched through these movies in that night. So that's all I have to say about it. Just putting that out there. Yeah, fun night, fun introduction to Jason X there. So
I would say that that leaves it up to you for what your favorite film would be.
Oh yeah, I gotta answer.
Yeah.
So my favorite film is Donnie Darko.
I should have saw that coming, because that is the one that I don't think you have ever changed your opinion on.
I don't think so.
Stayed at your top.
So for Donnie Darko, the first time I ever watched Donnie Darko, it was I had a friend like, oh, you have to watch this movie, and I'm like, what's it about? And they're like, it's about a demonic bunny rabbit, and I'm like, no thanks. And I kept pushing this movie off. I thought it sounded really dumb. Like, there's no way that a bunny is scary. And one day, I found it on YouTube. It was on YouTube in, like, parts. And we didn't have a desktop computer, but we had a laptop. And we had headphones, like dome headphone speakers that were at our laptop. And it was on YouTube, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to check this movie out. I didn't intend on watching the movie, but the movie hooked me, and I ended up watching the whole movie on YouTube in parts. And
the first time you saw it was like a bootleg version of it on YouTube.
Yes. And I had no idea what I was watching. I had heard something about a demonic bunny rabbit. I'm picturing a little bunny that this guy's chasing like Alice in Wonderland, but it's creepy looking. I'm like, okay, what's this movie going to be about? The first time that Frank speaks, and I was watching it on this laptop with dome headphones, and I didn't see it coming at all. And you just hear, wake up. And I just like, chills down my spine. I'm like, what the crap was that? Like, I remember it like really getting to me. And like, he just starts talking, and then he's like, Donnie's sleepwalking, and he walks outside, and kind of hazy, and it's blurry, and it slowly goes into focus. It's this giant 6-foot tall guy in a bunny costume standing there talking with this creepy voice. And I don't know, I must have liked it because I sat and watched through the whole movie. I didn't like it. I mean, subconsciously, I liked it. But when I finished the movie, I didn't like it.
You were, like, scarred from it a little bit.
I was like, well, if anyone's seen Donnie Darko, I'm sure some of you have, it's a really depressing ending.
It is dark, but, man.
And I remember watching the movie and it ending on that really depressing note, and me just kind of being like, I didn't like that. That's kind of sucked. But like, it was one of those movies that it didn't leave my head. I was done watching the movie, but I couldn't stop thinking about the movie. And it's one of those movies that has a lot going on in it, so it's perfect for rewatches. And at some point, I ended up going back and watching it legitimately, and I don't know. It's my favorite movie. I don't know at what point I crossed back over to admitting I liked it, but I think after it lingered and the more I thought about it, and I'm like, dang, there was a lot of thought put into this, and I I think those strong. I don't need to point out where the horror elements are in Donnie Darko, right?
No, they're pretty obvious. Yeah.
Like the strong horror elements, but it also being a really compelling drama. I just really liked it, and so that's my favorite movie.
So real quick, what was your theory about the guy that was just watching them in the forest?
I never really understood that. I don't know if I really understand that to this day. It's
it was
like
super weird.
Like
yeah.
There's like CIA elements, like they're being like he's an undercover CIA guy, like he's kind of keeping an eye on them because that engine fell on their house.
Yeah.
Like that kind of a thing. That's where I'm at.
I know there's just thought random perv in the woods.
I don't think it was random. You see him several times.
Do you? The
yeah,
same guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's got a flashlight. He's got a flashlight outside their house. He's like, yeah, there's a lot going on in that movie. Some of it's spiritual, some of it's scientific, some like it's.
The first time I watched that movie and I saw that, I forget what they called them, but it was the thing that came out of his chest.
Yeah,
that showed him where he was gonna go and
yeah.
like led him upstairs to the gun or something. But that whole scene was great. Like
yeah.
you see his sister at first just jumping around the table and it's like always leading her in the same direction. You see his dad's just get up and go towards the fridge. Then he's like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna get a beer. You want something?" And then just gets up and goes.
Yeah.
I always think like, man,
like
that stuck with me because I'm always thinking like we've all theoretically got one of those, and it's always like it could be going somewhere, and then you just get this idea like, oh, man, I need to go to the bathroom or something. You just have to get up and go. Like there could be forces like that controlling us. We would never know.
Yeah, it gives the open mind a lot to think about in that movie.
That's probably why it stuck with you for so long.
Yeah, and they say that the theatrical, there's people that hate the director's cut and they're like, you have to watch the theatrical. I like the director's cut, but they say that if the general consensus is that the theatrical cut leads toward a more spiritual route, or like leaves things to look like they're more spiritual, and then the director's cut leads a more scientific route, or like it shows you pages from the philosophy of time travel and things like that explain what's going on. So I don't know. I like the director's cut.
I'm gonna have to watch it again. It's been a couple of years since I've seen that one too.
Yeah, and that's, the horror elements are there, and that's what I love. I like the weird, creepy horror. It's not super gross, but it's definitely scary. Why don't you go ahead and talk about one of your favorite movies?
Okay, yeah, I guess we can jump back over to what we were doing before. The top 5 horror films. I'm gonna give one of mine, and you can jump in with one of yours. My number 1, I'm going to say, is An American Werewolf in London, 1981, directed by John Landis, starring David Naughton, who some people might not know this, was the Dr. Pepper jingle guy. I'm a pepper, you're a pepper. Some people might know this if they're from an older generation. You might not know he got fired from that campaign shortly after this movie came out because PepsiCo was not happy with the nude scenes. But it's all for the best because we got the best, to this day, werewolf transformation scene in all film. You could never top that scene. Rick Baker did an amazing job with those special effects, and it shows because that film was the first film ever to win an Academy Award for makeup.
Dang.
It didn't even have the category before that year. Some people even go out and say that they made the category just because they love the movie that much. I don't know if I believe it. But that movie also stars Griffin Dunne as Jack, the soon-to-be corpse friend, and Jenny Argater as Nurse Price, the love interest. It was filmed sequentially, except for the fake porno on the film See You Next Wednesday, which was the first thing filmed. I know you haven't watched the movie yet.
I haven't. I was going to say, I just want to put that out there. I haven't seen that movie.
I'm not going to say too much about it. because I want it to stay fresh for you.
That's probably a good idea.
The only other things I'll say are there was a rumor from one of the producers who claimed that the howl of the werewolf was comprised of a wolf played backwards along with an elephant.
Is that real?
Well, John Landis came out in an interview, actually on a documentary, and said the howl was actually comprised of 7 or 8 different animals.
Dang.
So when you hear that howl, and when you finally get to hear it in the movie, you're going to be like, wow, yeah, that's a weird sound this thing is making. So it makes you think, if you're, the way the movie starts, just 2 friends just walk along in the middle of nowhere, and you just hear that in the background. You're like, I think we should move faster.
Yep, get out of there.
And that is exactly what they tried to do. And the last thing I'll say about it is, it's John Landis, the director's favorite movie that he ever made. And this is the guy that made Animal House. Now, a lot of people will know what that movie is. John Belushi is, everybody's favorite comedian guy from, like, the 70s. So, if you don't know what Animal House is, go watch that, but then watch An American Werewolf afterwards. So, you want to jump in with one of yours?
Okay. So, I didn't cheat, but I just kind of grouped some sequels in with the original. Like, I just don't prefer one over the other, but I enjoy the movies. So, Urban Legend and Urban Legend Final Cut. So, just those Urban Legend movies. I think I probably watched them more than any other movie. And once I was old enough to buy my own movies, because as I said before, I wasn't allowed to watch horror movies. They weren't going to buy them for me. So when I was older, I had money and was able to buy my own movies. That was one of the first ones I bought, Urban Legend, and I loved it. I still love it. I just got the collector's edition from Scream Factory not too long ago. It's great. I know I had done a double feature night that you weren't able to make, where we aired both of those films. In between, we had a little intermission where we did some horror games, some Freddy vs. Jason trivia.
But, I'm going to have to watch them at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like they're the greatest films, because they're probably not. They're pretty typical slashers, but I do think they're unique, and if you like slashers, I think you'll enjoy them.
Well, I watched Happy Death Day, so I think I can sit down to watch
They're
those.
pretty good, and for the time, they had pretty big casts, I think. I mean, they were big to me. It's got Jared Leto, it's got Alicia Witt, Tara Reid's in it.
Ryan Felipe?
No, he's not in it.
I thought that was his. No, he was.
That's I Know What You Did Last Summer.
That's right. Which
is funny you bring that up. So the director of Urban Legend, I don't know his name. I'm sorry, guys. Unprofessional here. I don't remember his name. I know he's Australian. Anyway, the director was trying for the directing position of I Know What You Did Last Summer, but he shot his own trailer to send in to the studio for the job of the director of I Know What You Did Last Summer. But by the time they saw it, they had already hired someone else for the spot. They already gave someone else the directing position of Jamie Blanks. Yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry. I watched all the special features on the Blu-rays. I'm just really terrible at remembering names. That's just me, and I hate it. But
I couldn't tell you who the cinematographer was for Friday the 13th. Really, not off the top of my head.
But you can tell when I tell stories, even like about panels and conventions. I have a hard time remembering, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I'll be like, I don't remember his name. I'm sorry, guys, but he said this.
Sometimes that's preferable to just getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will just jump straight on that just to say something and sound like they know what they're talking about. It's better to say nothing than to get it so wrong that you have to go back later and go, oh, we have some corrections to make.
So, yeah, I try. But he created a trailer for I Know What You Did Last Summer with people that he was able to get a hold of, like on the fly, I guess he was always making movies as a kid, and he made this trailer for I Know What You Did Last Summer and sent it in to the studio to try and get the job, and I guess they were really impressed with it, but they had already hired someone else for the job. So they renegotiated and ended up giving him Urban Legend. And so that's how that ended up happening. And
I did not know that.
It's a good movie. I really like Michael Rosenbaum. I like him a lot. I watched Smallville. I know it's kind of pretty dated now, but I was a Smallville fan at the time.
That was the Superman show.
Yeah,
right?
that was one of the first. I don't want to say one of the first. There were obviously superhero shows. That was one of the first superhero shows that led into what is the modern superhero show today.
Lois and Clark. I don't know. You're too young for that one.
I know it existed, but I don't think it's the same thing. Like, I think Smallville changed the expectations for what a superhero show could be and what it became today.
I'm still floored that they dropped the ball and never made a live-action X-Men series.
Yeah.
Because the cartoon was so kick-ass. I mean, if you would have caught the kids of my generation who grew up watching X-Men every morning and then made a live-action series years later, granted, the movies were mainly okay.
Yeah.
But if you would have turned it into a series, man, I mean, the potential, you could have had 9 seasons out of some of those story arcs.
I really enjoy the X-Men movies. I mean, like the prequel ones more. I know that.
Yeah, actually, I'm right there with you.
I think that James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender as Magneto and Charles Xavier are amazing.
First Class and Days of Future Past are pretty good.
Yes.
If I'm going to claim an all-time favorite, though, it's probably the one that I just bought, Logan.
Logan's good. Yeah, it's X-Men universe, but it's not really an X-Men film.
Yeah.
But I get it. You know, it's got
the first
some
one's
of the
just
same.
too cheesy now. If you go back and watch the very
first
first X-Men movie,
but that changed, you know, the scene as well. Like, I mean, they did what Avengers eventually did, just with less of a budget and years ago. You know,
if it wasn't for that film, we never would have had any Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I don't think so.
I think that was the one that started it all. If it wouldn't have been for X-Men making it big at the box office.
X-Men and Spider-Man blowing up really helped pave the way there.
Yeah.
But where were we? Urban Legend?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's just always been one of my favorites. And I actually really got into real life urban legends because of it. I would go to bookstores with my parents and I would look for the urban legends every time. And I would get books on urban legends and books that just had collections of urban legends. And I would recreate what I didn't identify it as this at the time, but it was totally fan fiction. Like, I would recreate my own version, same plot kind of stuff, but with different characters and different urban legends. And I would write stories, and they would be slasher stuff. They would get offed by these urban legends. So I would read these books and come across new urban legends that I didn't know existed and be like, oh, that could be a thing. And then I would write it in. And so there's a urban legend about the headless motorcyclist. And it's something about he accidentally gets decapitated, but his body tenses up and rides by, and he passes the vehicle in front of him, and they just see this headless guy riding a motorcycle. But I worked that in there somehow. But it
almost sounds like that could happen.
The second movie is really good too, and it's actually got a surprising cast in it. It's got Anthony Anderson in it. What's the girl, Eva or Eve something? The one that's in Hitch, and Ghost Rider.
Longoria?
What's her name?
Ava Longoria?
I think that might be her. But she's darker complected. She's attractive. She was the lead in Hitch, I think. But she's in there. It's got quite a bit of people that you would recognize today, but that takes place at a film school. So they're making a movie about the premise of the first movie, kind of about this urban legend serial killer, but then somebody takes advantage of that. And so it's that kind of
setup.
Yeah. So those are both good. That's all I really have to say on those, I think. I met Alicia Witt, and she's great. And I met Michael Rosenbaum, and I love him. He's got a podcast that he does called Inside of You, and it's it's great. He has a lot of actors on there that are ones from stuff that I liked as a kid, and that's really cool. And he loves horror films as well. I'm like, why aren't you doing more horror films? But I need to ask him that if I ever get to meet him again. But yeah, that's all I got. So what's your... unless you have any comments, you can go on to your next one.
No, other than I'm just going to have to watch those movies because I've been putting them off for a while. But I'll go on to my number 2 pick. I'm going with Pumpkinhead, 1988.
Yeah.
It's another movie I got to get you to watch.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
It's directed by Stan Winston, and it's actually originally from a poem by Ed Justin.
Okay.
I do not have the poem in front of me.
Okay.
But if you want to do a little homework, listeners out there, just go type in Ed Justin in a search engine along with Pumpkinhead, and I'm sure you'll come across it pretty easy.
It's not hard to find.
No. But the poem itself, I think, is actually part of the dialogue in some of the scenes. You hear some children saying the poem to another child to frighten him that Pumpkinhead's going to come get him.
Well, that's cool.
And actually, one of the children that's doing the frightening is none other than Mayim Bialik.
Who's that?
That's the girl from Blossom and The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, I was gonna say what's that? I know what The Big Bang Theory is.
Yeah, Blossom was a lot earlier, but yeah, she plays one of the children in the
Powerpuff Girls.
The rundown dirt farmers in this like weird like rural place that's like scaring her younger brother by telling him about Pumpkinhead.
I'm like, I know who Blossom from the Powerpuff Girls is.
No, it was like a weird teenage show. You remember Clarissa Explains It All?
Yeah.
It was like before that.
Okay.
It was like the same kind of idea. But there have been shows like that every generation, I think.
Yeah.
Like Sabrina came after Clarissa. It was basically
Was
the same
that after
kind of thing.
Clarissa?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize Clarissa was that old.
Oh, Clarissa is like early 90s, mid-90s, and Sabrina was like late 90s.
Okay.
But getting off topic here.
Okay.
I know.
Sorry.
But Lance Henriksen stars as Ed Harley, the vengeance-seeking father. Florence Schaffler, I hope I pronounced that right, as Haggis, the backwoods witch.
Uh-oh.
And Tom Woodruff Jr. as the titular demon of vengeance. Of course, there were lesser-known actors in there, such as Mushroom the dog, who played the Harley's dog and was also in the movie Gremlins.
Yeah.
He had been in Gremlins a few months before starring in his role in Pumpkinhead.
What a star.
It was strange whenever you see dogs like that in different kind of movies, but
I don't usually notice that.
most people would not. It was also the debut of another person, actor Brian Bremer, who would later go on to be in Brian Yuzna's cult body horror masterpiece, Society.
Well,
So
there
we
you
tied
go.
it back together
There we
again.
go.
The last thing I'll say on Pumpkinhead, Pumpkinhead doesn't actually resemble a pumpkin at all.
Yeah, I've seen the thing.
He gets his name from the fact that summoning the demon requires digging him up from a remote pumpkin patch. So, therefore, Pumpkinhead.
So, wait, so you have to dig the demon up?
Yes.
So he's just kind of in a pumpkin patch?
He's somewhere where no earthly person would have any business being, so happening upon him is just about impossible.
So, like, okay, so, like, he will manifest in any pumpkin patch, or he's just in one and you have to find him?
He's in a very specific one, but only the bog witch, Haggis, knows where he is. And you
Okay.
have to pay her in more than coin, if you know what I mean.
So, like, that's gross. so say you're like, because he grants wishes or something, right? Am I
No.
way off?
No,
okay.
you're way off.
Okay. So, like, you're like, I'm looking for this pumpkin head, and she's like, well, I know what pumpkin patch he went and crawled into this time, but in order for me to tell you.
Not only that, he has to go dig him up, bring him back.
Like, carry
the
the
witch.
giant pumpkin thing?
Okay, that's another thing that's going to freak you out when you watch this movie. Next to Rick Baker's transformation scene in An American Werewolf, this is one of the other transformation scenes. It's real fast. But the work that they do, they use 3 or 4 different completely built models of this monster as it's becoming from this larval stage to this gigantic, towering, hulking demon.
Okay, so he's not like that normally. So
No.
when you dig him up, he's not that big.
No, he's the size of, like, I'm illustrating my hands to show about, like, a 3 or 4 foot width. It's
Okay.
not very
He's
big.
like a little grub thing.
Yeah, it looks
Ew.
humanoid, but it looks like a mummified corpse, basically. You dig up this thing
Huh.
that looks like it could be human.
That's weird.
And then
Okay.
you lug it back to the witch. I won't say anything more about it because I really want you to watch it and get
Okay.
the full thrilling experience of seeing Pumpkinhead hunt down a bunch of teens who did something they shouldn't have and got the Demon of Vengeance after them.
Okay. Is that leave it open for me then?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. So the second film I'm going to talk about is one of my favorite films, and I think this is a more popular film. Final Destination.
Oh, yes.
Like, I don't know if it was my age. It came out just for me. I don't know what was going on there, but
I saw that one in the theater, too.
Final Destination was one that came out when I wasn't sure how I felt about horror films. Because like I mentioned many times, I wasn't allowed to watch horror films. And so I didn't want to like horror films. I didn't want to get in trouble or like to go against my parents, you know. But like, I kind of stumbled into it. Like I said, I always liked dinosaurs already. I liked Jurassic Park. And then I was like, well, the paranormal stuff and all that's really stupid. I only like the murder mystery stuff. And it's not because I like the bad stuff. It's because I like, it's fun trying to figure out who the killer is and like what's going on. I liked the smarts behind it. And that's how I would tell bad movies from good movies, is after you figure out the reveal, does it still make sense? And could I have guessed it? Was it me or was it the movie? But
The best ones are the ones that you never get and could never have gotten unless you were like Sherlock Holmes smart.
see, I kind of think the best ones are the ones that you didn't get, but you could have gotten had you been thinking on a higher, like a little,
Like Knives Out.
yeah,
Like that one, if you could have paid
We
a
don't
little
wanna
bit more
spoil it.
attention. Yeah, we won't say anything about that one, but
but yeah,
after
like if
watching
you,
it, yeah.
it, like to where if you are paying attention and looking at the right things, you can figure out who it is, but they're not gonna tell you who it. Like, it's not gonna be super easy. But there are some that you watch them and then it's like, I never could have guessed that. You guys were like, it doesn't make sense now that you revealed who the killer is because of this scene and this scene. But so that's how I felt. And then Final Destination came out, and I was really intrigued by the notion that this didn't have any of that, but somehow it still captivated me. And it everyone could relate to it. The killer was not a killer. It was everyday things. It was just going to work, going to school was what was dangerous. Everyone can relate to that.
That opening scene on the plane,
Oh my gosh.
that is so iconic now. It's like, if I take a plane and if I have to travel by aircraft anywhere, that is instantly the first thing I'm thinking of when I'm sitting down in my seat, is I'm like opening the tray table just to see if it breaks. If it breaks in my hand, I will know to get off the flight.
And I think that people reference to me Final Destination more than, I almost want to say any other movie, but I won't, any other horror movie, like on a regular basis. We're talking about Cedar Point the other day and how I'm too terrified to go back on the dragster. And you just seen Final Destination too many times. You know, 'cause the third one, it takes place on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And like, it's, you know, you were saying the other day, like I was on the turnpike or I was on the highway and I
Yep.
saw that truck with the logs on the back of it speeding by and I'm like, nope. And I'm like, I'm just thinking how I'm going to pull into the other lane if that thing gets in front of me. And like, that is such, you know, that the movies are so effective when, how long's it been since you watched Final Destination?
The first one or any of them?
Any of them.
Probably at least 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years since you've seen any of them. And you
They're
still
right there.
think about it.
Well, it's not just the movies either. It's like maybe the movies got us to think about it a little bit more broadly than we used to think about just death or accidents or something. And now I actually drive in a very defensive manner. I'm always thinking that everyone around me is secretly plotting to run me off the road when I least expect it. So it keeps me on my toes.
Well, you're just a paranoid human being.
I can be sometimes, but then when it happens, I won't be surprised.
Yeah.
At least that's my theory. I don't think if it's going to work.
Maybe he shouldn't have these movies. Can someone get them out of here? No.
Take all of them but Frankenhooker. Please leave me the one that I enjoy.
I think that Final Destination is very effective. I think I'll get into this a little later. I'll just say I don't think that Final Destination gets the credit that it deserves. And I think the characters, for me at the time, being a teen, a young male teen, I related a lot to Alex, and like he's kind of outcast. He's like kind of looked down on by he's bullied a little bit by the popular kid, and I don't know. I think that it was good. It had Sean William Scott in there. I don't have much on the movie. I do remember that they said that it was a failed X-Pot. I don't know where that came from. It was a failed episode for the X-Files. They wrote it as an episode for the X-Files, and it got turned down. And so
that's ludicrous. They really should have made that episode.
They're like, screw it, we're gonna make it into a movie. And I think it did much better as a film series. But yeah, that's how the concept was created, was for X-Files, and it didn't make it on the show. So
well, if it teaches you anything, it teaches you, one, look before you step off the curb.
That bus scene, man.
And two, don't play next to the train tracks, kids.
And that's another good thing that gets overlooked about horror films that I'll just bring up there, like especially Final Destination. It teaches you, like, hey, you know, mortality isn't guaranteed, or and you gotta watch out for yourself and pay attention and look at what's happening around you.
This is what, if they could make that movie again tomorrow, and all they would need to do is just show somebody walking down the street texting on their phone, not looking at what they're doing.
I really think that they should bring back Final Destination as long as it's in good hands, and I will continue, and that's a good idea. Like, just modernize it,
Hell, get Eli Roth to do it. That guy loves taking some series and doing different stuff with it.
Do a reboot. I'm not a big fan of Eli Roth. I'll just put that out there. But do a reboot. A soft reboot, because you don't want to keep trying to link it to all these other movies.
The guy that, I can't think of his name, I apologize, the guy that directed the remake of Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Let him have a crack at this one.
Sure.
Because I really enjoyed that movie, and I went against a lot of my friends that were horror buffs that said, oh, no automatically to an Evil Dead remake. And I was on the fence until I watched it, and I'm like, no, sometimes remakes can be good.
Yeah, I love the Evil Dead remake. But to be fair, me being, born in 90, I hadn't seen the originals before I saw the Evil Dead remake, and I did the reversal where I saw the Evil Dead remake and I loved it, and then I went back and watched the other Evil Dead movies.
You can't do that, because it's like...
But I did.
I know you did.
But I did.
It's like most people start out with what they have at the time. Like, we started out back in my day, but back in my day, we started out with internet that dialed through a phone line. And if someone picked up the phone, you got disconnected from the internet. And it sucked. And then we got to always online internet. Not any faster, but at least you didn't get kicked off if somebody made a phone call. And then
we had that, okay?
We got upgraded a little bit more. We finally got cable. Now, if you took kids nowadays who have had cable and you put them back on dial-up, they would riot in the streets. So I can only imagine what someone looking at a movie from 2015, when that one came out, and going back to watch a movie from 1978, they're not going to have the same experience.
And I didn't. But look, I'm like, forget internet. They're gonna be like, what's a landline?
Yeah, you know.
But no, like, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, the fact is, I hadn't seen any of the Evil Dead movies, and because of that remake, I saw them.
It was a good jumping off point to eventually get to there.
If not for any other reason, remakes sometimes influence people to go back and watch the originals where they otherwise wouldn't have. And I'm not a big fan of the original Evil Dead, but I did like Evil Dead 2. And I'm kind of in the middle on Army of Darkness. It's definitely a lot more comedy, but Evil Dead, the one thing that it had on the remake was I loved the idea that it was recorded and they played the recording, and that's why it happened. They didn't know what was going on. They just hit the play button and it's playing on this recording and it says the words, and it's like, oh crap, that was clever. I don't know why they didn't continue that into the remake.
Yeah,
because
it made way more sense.
Everybody was screaming at that screen. Like, why would you say those? Why are you doing this?
Instantly what that makes me think of.
Yeah.
If you read the Latin, I'm out.
Cabin in the Woods. Look, I'm drawing the line in the sand at the Latin. Do not read the Latin.
And it's really, maybe that's why they did it. Maybe they were fans of that movie and just gave it like a nod by him just reading the Latin out loud.
I think the Cabin in the Woods was giving a nod to Evil Dead.
Yeah.
It was like, yep, do not say the Latin, you idiot. Because that's what everyone's screaming. And he went to such lengths to, like, he had to scribble on the page to, like, get
he had to do
words
the paper under the paper kind of trick.
Yes, he went to such lengths to get everyone killed. What I just want to, we were talking about directing and who you think should direct Final Destination if they were to come back. I don't really care, or so much, I guess more so, I'm not focused on who's going to direct. I'm focusing on what's the opening disaster going to be and would it be good. And I have always thought that it seems a lot of these, it's transportation.
Yeah.
Plane, driving.
The second one, yeah.
The third one isn't technically transportation, it's an entertainment.
Was it NASCAR?
But no, it's it's the roller coaster.
Okay.
But it's still something mobile that you're moving around on. And then NASCAR is the fourth one. And then the fifth one, they're crossing a bridge. So, like, I've always thought that a good idea for a Final Destination opening disaster would be a cruise ship.
Oh, yeah.
Like, everyone gets on a cruise ship and, like, this ship goes down and everyone on it is stuck and they all get killed. And either they decide not to get on the cruise ship or they decide to take a lifeboat out, like, before this happens. And that's how they get away. And it might be kind of personal because I have a really big fear of the ocean and, like, the deep and the water and all that they'd be surrounded by it.
On down there.
But I also think that just generally speaking, that would be a good way to do it. And I've always thought that was cool. And I just kind of kept waiting for them to do it, and then the series stopped and it never got to happen. So I really hope if they bring it back, they do something like a cruise ship, because I think that's perfect opportunity.
The only other one I can think of off the top of my head, I didn't think ahead on this one because I didn't know you were going to bring it up, but why not a train?
I didn't know I was going to bring this up. This is just kind of...
In the movie I know I've mentioned before, Wanted...
Yeah,
there's a huge train crash in that one.
A train would be good too.
Yeah.
That would, because that's something that it's moving. You can't control whether it stops or not. And if
it was, make it a Japanese one. The Japanese bullet trains that go like 300 miles an hour.
Dang, yeah. And if they really have to, they can be like traveling, vacation or like a school thing.
Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, that would be cool. I'd like to see that. It sounds messed up. I'd like to see a bullet train go off and...
I mean, that's the thing. That's why it would be perfect, because they have a perfect safety record.
Yeah.
There's never been an incident with, like, a Japanese bullet train going off the rails or anything. They pride themselves on this, so something like that to happen would be astronomically impossible, and it would tie it into the first movie. Oh, you'd have to be a pretty messed up god to take out this plane, you know?
Yeah.
With all the, like, the one guy who's like clinging on to life in the first class section.
That's one thing that they never really continued on with Final Destination was there's in the first one it seemed more so like Death was trying to kill them, but there was an opposing force trying to help them.
Yeah.
And like, cause he sees the vision of his seatbelt broke, and when he's in the moving car, but then he looks down again and it's not broke; it's still on. So like, there was like a more so opposing forces in the first one, whereas after that,
the opposite of death, luck.
I think it was supposed to be more of like a religious thing, like a god and a devil type thing.
It doesn't make any sense to me though, because I mean,
I guess it's a reaper. Is like death himself.
Right. That's like the bad guy in those movies.
I don't know how much it counts, but Tony Todd was at Motor City Comic Con a while back, and I did get a chance to talk to him. And me being a Final Destination fan like I am, I talked to him about Final Destination, and I asked him what his character was supposed to be. I was like, it seems like he kind of helps people, but not really. I asked him if he really knew what was going on with his character, and he just outright said that his character is a fallen angel. Or no. He was... Dang it, now I can't remember it straight. He either said that he was a fallen angel or like the opposite. Like he was a risen...
Oh, like a demon?
Like a dark angel that was
okay.
like on Earth now.
That would almost make more sense than the fallen angel thing. Because he would still be... Because he has that air about him. Like, he might be kind of bad, but he's also not that bad.
Right. So, like, he's kind of in this middle ground. And I'm mad at myself for not remembering that straight.
It'll come back to you.
It'll come back to me.
As soon as we get out of the studio here.
But I like that he knew exactly... I don't know if he created that to help him with his acting, or if that's something that he talked to the director about, and, like, that's what it was. But he told me straight up when I asked him. Like, he knew exactly what he thought about this character, and yeah, so that's why he's kind of helpful, but at the same time, he doesn't really care. It's not like he's going out there and like, no, like, trying to protect these kids. He's like, I'll see you soon, you know?
I almost always thought that secretly he was the personification of death. Like, he wanted to toy with them so much that he wanted to just help them just a little bit because he knew he would win. He was telling them as much the whole time, like, you can't cheat death. And it would be funny if he's the one telling them that.
But I like that he knows death, and he's speaking that because he's been there, and he's like, you don't want to... He's like, you don't want to F with that, Mac Daddy.
Either one works great.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. That is a great series of films.
So I think that's enough about Final Destination. Go ahead with your next movie.
Well, it's funny. We were talking about it almost a little while ago.
Yeah.
Because my number 3 pick is Evil Dead 2.
Oh, man. We didn't talk a lot about Evil Dead 2, though. We talked about Evil Dead Remake and Evil Dead 1.
And you had mentioned that you liked Evil Dead 2 more than the first one. And, I mean, that's why I put Evil Dead 2 and not the first one on my list here.
And they pretty much recap the first one in Evil Dead 2.
Kind of. Okay, I'll do my rundown here. From 1987, directed by Sam Raimi.
Who's that?
Yeah, nowadays we know him a little bit better.
Spider-Man.
Starring Bruce the Chin Campbell as Ashley Williams, that badass demonic fighter that we all knew and loved. Also Sarah Berry as Annie Nobe, and Denise Bixler as Linda number 2.
Linda number 2.
Often considered to be a remake of Evil Dead, this is not accurate. Actually, the rights to show the scenes from the first movie could not be obtained by Raimi.
Oh, so he had
made a deal with the studio to release the first movie where he no longer had the rights to the film. He couldn't get it back to show in the second film. So really, the first 20 minutes is just a recap or a retelling of how Ash got to the cabin. Which a lot of us like to joke about Linda number 2, which they even brought up later in the series, Ash versus the, what was it? Evil Dead.
Yeah, Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Yeah, he said, you know, she was my first Linda, as implying that there were multiple Lindas.
That they're
over
both
the years.
canon and
Yeah, and that's why you need to watch that series. It is hilarious.
So funny you should say that. I bought season 1 on Black Friday one year, and I just haven't gotten around
Still
to it
haven't
yet.
watched it
So
yet?
I have it sitting over there.
Oh man,
It's just a matter of time. So
when
I'll
you
get
to it, you're gonna have so much fun with it.
Yeah.
But going on from here, most of the film was shot on a set built inside the gymnasium of J.R. Faison Junior High School in Wadesboro, North Carolina. So the only shots you see in the actual forest are shot somewhere, I believe it was outside of Tennessee or Michigan, and then all the rest of the interior shots were filmed in a junior high gym.
That's funny.
I guess it must have been summer break and they just got the permission to use big ups to Sam Raimi for cutting some corners and saving some money.
I can't believe a school let them do that in there.
Maybe they didn't know what movie they were letting in there.
Maybe.
But the last thing I'll say about it, other than it just being, it's an iconic film. There's so much you can say, but at 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 5 seconds into the film, we got the first utterance of what would become one of the most iconic phrases to be uttered in a horror film. Groovy.
Groovy. That's awesome. Yeah, and we didn't mention that cameo. He does come back for the remake,
Yes.
just to say groovy.
And that was one of the big reasons I got somebody mad at me that went to the movies with me to see that movie, because I would not leave the theater until I saw that stinger at the end of the movie that was just Bruce Campbell looking at the camera groovy. Like, that's all it was. And because they didn't say what it was going to be. They just said he had a stinger at the end of the movie, and you had to sit through all the credits to see it. And I'm like, I don't care what it is. I want to see this shit.
So you went into it knowing that he was going to be at the end credits.
Yes.
See, I had no idea that he was going to be at the end credits.
I saw it day one. It's opening day. I went and saw it. I took off work to go see this movie.
Nice. Yeah, I remember there being a lot of debate outside of the theater by people that saw the movie, just standing around talking about, did they like it, did they not like it, did it meet expectations of the original franchise, and yada yada, which you don't see very much, especially around our small area that we live in, and there's not a lot of people that usually go to the theaters. But I remember it being kind of packed, and I remember afterward there being a lot of lingering and discussion, which is pretty cool. But
I like when people do that, but for God's sakes, if you're gonna do it outside. Don't do it next to the line of people that are about to see the movie. Don't be that guy.
I think it was the late night showing, so I don't think there were any more people going in.
Feel free to squawk all you want about it then, but yeah, I've had that happen to me where I'm going into a movie and someone coming out of it, or that had just been milling around outside the theater, had spoiled something, key plot point for me, and I almost couldn't even go into the theater to watch it, but thankfully it still turned out to be an okay movie.
That's not cool, though.
No.
I remember people talking about how when the final Harry Potter film was in theaters, they would drive around and yell out at the lines of people what happened in the ending. Like, they would just spoil it. I'm like, that is such a dick move. But,
trolls got a troll. That is exactly what happens there. But you know what? We'll move on from this. What's your number 4?
My number 4, Scream 1 and 2. That's another sequel thing. I just grouped them together. Scream. I love Scream. And I have a really hard time deciding if I like Scream 1 or 2 more. Probably 1, but they're so close for me.
I almost would have to go with 2 myself.
Really?
Just because I gave them both a rewatch really recently. And
you like 2 more than 1.
I forgot how good 2 was.
Yeah, it's really good. But the characters, it doesn't have Stu, and
But I really liked, what's his name? Timothy Olyphant's
he's
character.
so good.
He was almost as good as a new Stu.
Yeah. I love Scream. And I mentioned this briefly the other day to you as well. I feel like Scream gets a lot of crap from people for being the horror franchise that sucks, kind of. And Scream is so good, but people will be like, oh, I don't like dumb horror movies like that Scream. And it just kind of, like, it struggles so much to reach to the potential of the other iconic slashers like Freddy and Jason and Michael and, Leatherface. But it's like, I think that...
Yeah, I think people forgot how gory those movies were. And they don't, like, I didn't remember in the second one when the two cops were getting killed by Ghostface there at almost the end of the movie with Sydney and her best friend in the back of the cop car.
Oh, yeah.
That cop just runs into that pole, and he basically gets a gigantic construction pole through the face, and they show some pretty graphic content there.
Yeah.
I didn't remember it being that gory.
I think that people underestimate how well Scream is consistently good. Like, I know a lot of people really don't like Scream 3, and I know it's the weakest in the franchise, but if you compare, so there's 4 Scream films, you compare Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4, the lowest point in the Scream franchise doesn't come nearly as close to the lowest point in, like, Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. Like,
yeah,
I think that Scream was consistently good, more or less. And
I think it's maybe that Ghostface just never got the recognition as that kind of a killer like Jason or Freddy or Leslie Vernon or like...
And I got... nice. I like it. And I got this this piece of art back here that's what's the famous scene?
Oh, the dogs playing poker.
Yeah, but it's the parody version, which is all the slashers playing poker. And you got Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, you got Chucky even sitting there, and Freddy, and then you got Ghostface down here, and he's been stabbed in the face, like he got caught cheating or something, and his cards are just laying on him, and he's like laying there dead.
What's funny to me is Ghostface is the only one of the iconic killers that people can bring up that's always just a normal dude.
I like it because it's always someone different, and it allows them to remain fresh.
So it's always a different backstory for why they did it, and it's not just because he came back. It's always that with most movies.
Whereas you can figure out what Freddy's motives are and what he's doing in the first movie, but then in the next one you have to come up with, well, maybe he also had this happen to him and then also had this. You get to start over with Scream, and they can link back, but they get to do their own thing. And
case in point with like Halloween 4 or 5, it started going downhill.
Did it?
So fast.
See, that's one that I saw Halloween, and I saw like one of the bad continuations. It's the one where the rappers in it, and they got like the reality TV show
that
thing.
was like 6, and
okay.
We don't speak about
that.
6.
So I've seen 1, I've seen 6, and then I saw the Rob Zombie remakes, and I liked the first Rob Zombie Halloween, and I didn't like the second one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on those.
Like, I thought the first one was plausible, and I liked that it took a character that had become really far-fetched and made him more grounded. Like, I can see why he doesn't die. He's a big guy, and I can see how he gets, like, it didn't seem like, how is he teleporting, which a lot of horror movies, like Jason Voorhees, how did he get there when he was already here? I felt like it did a good job of not doing that. And then with the sequel, it threw all that out of the window. They added supernatural elements, like he's seeing his mom, and like, and then it was like he was just here. How is he getting clear over here? Or he would beat somebody to their house when they were driving in a car.
Yeah.
And he's on foot. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. So that, I kind of threw that one out the window a little bit.
At least they didn't make a third one yet. Notice I said yet.
Yet. I'm not a big Rob Zombie fan.
Did you watch the newest Halloween? I know this is getting off topic, but...
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I saw it's fine. I saw the new Halloween, and I did like it.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen Halloween 2, and I think you said it kind of discredits that.
Yeah, it does.
So I could see how if you're a fan of Halloween 2, which I haven't seen, then it might irk people a little bit. But I liked it.
It's weird because it just, like, it meant to take the place of Halloween 2 whenever it's like, that is an established movie already, and they just, like, tried to rewrite the canon. Like, no, it went 1, and then he got caught right away, and now it's 40 years later.
Well, what I heard, I don't want to upset anyone here, that's not my goal, but what I heard was that Halloween 2 had a twist that wasn't very well received, which was that Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, that they were brother and sister or something like that.
Yeah.
But
that was
a lot of people, I guess, felt like that took away from the first movie, which the scare factor was that it was some stranger and it could happen to anyone, and it was...
Well, it was heavily implied in the first movie, though.
Was it?
Yes, because the gravestone of his sister was over top of her bed. Like, he had brought the gravestone. If I'm remembering this right, and I think I am, I think he had brought, like, the stone with him to the house.
I don't remember that.
God, was it
that might have been in the opening of the second one or something.
Maybe it was. No, well, it wasn't the opening of the second one, but maybe it was, like...
The way that I heard it was like...
All these movies run together, that's
the
problem.
Because that was John Carpenter, right? That did the second one?
Yeah, it was still him.
So what I heard was that he was kind of like, oh, well, I just had this idea. Wouldn't this be cool? And did it, and some people weren't cool with it. If you are, great, but I think that's why there's such mixed reviews about the second one, because there's a throwaway line where she's kind of like, oh, like, isn't it your brother or something? And she's like, no, that's just some crap that people made up. Like, and I could see how if you're a fan of the second one, that would irritate you, but if you're not, then you kind of like, okay, I like that this is taking it back.
I personally liked H2O.
Yeah.
I thought Jamie Lee Curtis coming back for that one.
I haven't seen that one.
That one was a perfect end of the series because it tied everything together and it still kept that whole storyline.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, she finally axed Michael for good, and it was done and over with. Sorry, spoiler alert. You haven't seen it yet.
I mean, they always die, right?
You can kind of guess where it was going, yeah.
So I don't think there's much more to say on Scream. It's pretty iconic. Everybody's more or less seen it. So, what's your next movie?
My next one, my number 4 pick, I would get insane amounts of crap from people if one of us at least didn't bring up this movie on any kind of list of top horror. It's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
1974 was the year that one came out. It was directed by Tobe Hooper, starring Marilyn Burns as Sally, one of the very first Final Girls. Also, Paul Partain as Franklin, the wheelchair-bound stick in the mud we can't wait to see by it. Also, Edwin Neal as the hitchhiker who just loves meat of all kinds. And Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface, who needs no introduction. Now, some things people might not know about this movie. John Larroquette, who would go on to be one of the stars of TV's Night Court, and I know I'm already dating myself by bringing up Night Court in the first place.
I don't know what that is.
It was a sitcom, but
oh, okay.
He did the opening narration for this movie, and his payment was a marijuana cigarette. That's a joint to all you hipsters out there. That's what he was paid for his narration in this movie. Director Tobe Hooper says the idea for the movie came to him while Christmas shopping. I'm not making this up.
Some people have different ideas of the holiday spirit.
Do you want to know why it came to him while Christmas shopping?
Let's hear it.
The story goes that he was standing in the hardware section of a very crowded store and was wondering how he could best get out of the store. And then his gaze found the chainsaws, and the rest, as they say, was history.
That's nuts. That's genuine.
That is a true story, as affirmed by Tobe Hooper himself.
That's cool. That's kind of sadistic, but that's the point, right?
I mean, some of us, while we're Christmas shopping, we can get a little delirious. This guy just saw the chainsaws and thought, you know what? I think I need to get out of here. And then he went to Texas and made one of the greatest horror movies of all time. And now we have a lot of people that are still trying to make that movie and not realizing they just did it right the first time. You know what? And I'll go on a limb. Number 2, pretty damn good too. That one, a little bit gorier, which is saying a lot, because the first one, honestly, a lot of people have a misremembering kind of thing of the first movie.
Of how gory it is.
There's really only 2 or 3 instances where there's blood.
That's a testament to how good the filmmaking is. That you don't see it, but it's so effective that you think you see it.
That shot where Gunnar Hansen is taking that girl as Leatherface and just pulling her in to the house, and just like, he's so huge, it just looks like he wraps his entire body around her and just picks her up like she's nothing and takes her in.
It's scary.
Having a guy like that around, I mean, he had to duck through almost every doorway because they had him in 3-inch heels. He was already kind of a tall guy, but now he was like 6'4" or something when they were making this movie. So yeah, pretty intimidating to see that guy coming after you. That's another one we got to do for our movie night sometime. That's getting off topic, but
no, it's fine. We'll get there.
What do you got for your number 4?
So number 4, I don't think it'll shock you. Can you guess?
It wouldn't be one of the posters we have on the wall over here, would it?
It wouldn't.
No?
No. It's Behind the Mask.
Okay.
The Rise of Leslie Vernon. I just love that movie. If you guys already saw my last podcast, you already heard about my meetings with Nathan Basil and how that went and how much I love this movie. But I just really do. And I've always been hesitant to consider... Like, I saw Cabin in the Woods, and I had a stupid channel, Looking Glass Reviews. It's still up if you want to check it out. But, like, I don't really post on there anymore. We saw Cabin in the Woods in theater. And then we went home to do a review on it. And I wanted to give it, like, a 9 or something. But I'm like, I just saw this movie. Like, is it really already one of my favorite movies? I was really hesitant about it. But I'm glad that since the years have passed, it's still one of my favorite movies. So Behind the Mask is similar in that sense that it's not new by any means, but compared to some of these other films, it's pretty new.
Well, almost every movie that I brought up on my list is from the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point. I kind of like that we bring these different dynamics, though, that you're old-fashioned, you like all these 70s, 80s horror films, and my favorites have pretty much all been 90s to 2000.
Well, it's funny because I think that's because that's what we grew up on and that's what we had available. I had a video store with VHS tapes and then later DVDs. And whenever you were going to rent and watch movies or getting to watch movies at all, because of your background with the parents that you had, you got to see what was available. And usually what was available was what was new.
Yeah.
So I could see that dynamic. I mean, if you would have grown up around the same time I did, maybe you would have been watching Night of the Demons or, Pumpkinhead or something like that.
It's interesting. But yeah, the film is newer, but yet it plays on your admiration toward those other movies as well. So, like, I was a big Nightmare on Elm Street fan. When I was in school, I wasn't a big fan of, like, Halloween, Friday the 13th, a lot of these classics that I've since then kind of developed more of a taste for. I was more so like this, don't like those. There was no in between. But since then, it's changed a bit. But Behind the Mask plays on the fact that they are expecting you to have seen Halloween and these other movies, and in order to be as meta as they are, and for you can't really like it if you don't also enjoy those films to a degree. And the more your movie knowledge is expanded within those other films and references that they make in this movie, the more your love for this movie kind of grows. So
that's why we were talking about, like, our final, if we were going to have a final movie night, for one of our friends that doesn't watch a lot of movies, we're educating.
Yeah.
And being the shepherds through the valley of death for her.
That's an overstatement. Friend that doesn't watch a lot of movies, she hadn't seen anything. She There was one movie she said she had seen that shocked me. I don't remember what it was. Do you?
Yeah.
She's like, I've seen that. Was it Silence of the Lambs or something?
No, it was. I don't think it was a horror movie.
It was a horror movie.
Was it?
And I was surprised that she had seen it. Maybe it was The Collector or something. But it was a movie that I would not have expected that she had seen.
I'm not sure now. I know she did say that the lesson,
Yeah.
but we were saying, what if we had a final night? Like, what would your final movie pick be? And I think that should be yours. Is Behind the Mask, because that would build up to everything, and then have that one as like the culmination of, okay, you've taken your masterclass in horror. Now you can see, where is this one going? Watch this one unfold.
You have no idea how bad it kills me inside that I have this voice of restraint within me that I won't let myself show these meta horror films yet, because she hasn't seen enough of the classics in order to appreciate the meta ones to the point that she should. So I'm like, we can't do Cabin in the Woods yet because she hasn't seen The Strangers, or she hasn't seen, like, listing off all these movies. And then I'm like, she can't see Scream yet because she hasn't seen Prom Night and she hasn't seen Halloween. And, like, it sucks because Scream, Cabin in the Woods, and Behind the Mask, these meta movies are some of my favorites. But I know that the payoff will be better if I just wait until she's already seen these. And
to be fair, I did see Scream before I saw Prom Night.
Yeah.
And I just rewatched Prom Night with Zach not too long ago.
I still haven't seen Prom Night.
That's another one.
So, like,
Add it to the list.
Not to be which, you know, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna do movies that we should have seen that we haven't seen, but just not today.
Yeah, no, that's fair. We are running a little bit long on this one. I hope you guys have hung in with us. We'll get around to wrapping it up after a little bit here. We want to get through our lists. We only got one more apiece, correct?
Do you care if I knock off my last one here because I have a tie-in?
No, go ahead.
So we're talking about movie nights. Jonas is already laughing at me. He knows where this is going.
I think I might.
I had this last Friday was my movie night, and I don't get movie nights very often. We got a bunch of snow, and I'm like, what perfect movie to show than it's one of my favorite horror movies, and I have it on Blu-ray, and Jonas hasn't seen it in a long time. Like a lot of people haven't seen it. I was gonna show Dreamcatcher.
I was just about to say, I'll give you a hint. Shit weasels.
That's not a good description of the movie. Look, I'll just say, I realize that Dreamcatcher isn't a movie that a lot of people appreciate. Like I think I said before, I think a lot of my favorite movies are pretty low on the critic scores.
You know,
but
I'm not sure where that one's ranked at right now, but I don't think it was as bad as people made it out to be.
Yeah, like I have friends that are also like, yeah, Dreamcatcher, like that's good, it's intense. But then the majority of people are like, you like Dreamcatcher?
And I've seen you get into those conversations before too.
I have the poster up. You know, I love the cast. I really want to meet them. It's
no, they did a great job with the cast. I mean, Thomas Jane, he's awesome in that one. Not to mention Timothy Olyphant, another one, second time.
I mean, I don't get. It's pretty much. It's kind of like Alien, but it's like, what if they didn't burst out? What if they had to come out the other way? And to me, that's. I know it's gross, but like that's scarier to me than it just busting its way out and then you die. It's like, what if, like, you had to suffer through this process? Like, that's scary. But I don't want to get hung up on that. Dreamcatcher was supposed to be my movie, and people are going to be showing up in an hour, and I'm scavenging. I can't find my Blu-ray, and I look through my eBay purchase history, and it's not on there. And I look through my Amazon purchase history, and it's not on there. I never pulled the trigger, and I didn't buy the movie. And so I didn't even own it. I owned it on DVD, but we've been trying to stick to Blu-rays because the quality just stands out at this point for us.
It is hard to go back to DVD after having Blu-ray for this long.
And some of the DVDs I have, Dreamcatcher included, I've had for so long that sometimes they freeze and skip in parts.
Yeah.
And they're not they don't play the smoothest. So I was pretty sure I had it on Blu-ray, time to bust it out and open it, and we're all going to watch Dreamcatcher, and that didn't happen.
This is why I've tried to implement a new rule for our movie nights. A day before the night, you have to make sure that you have the movie that you're planning on showing.
It's just like a kick in the face, like, make sure you have the movie, Jesse.
But, you know, in your defense, it still turned into a great movie night.
Well, then I tried to put in The Fourth Kind, which is another movie that Jonas made sure to point out has a terrible score on Rotten Tomatoes. But I'm like, The Fourth Kind is one of the few movies that's still able to scare me. It's still able to put chills down my spine. I understand that it's weird and that it's kind of campy for some people, but like, it's effective to me. And that might just be the alien thing. I don't know. But
I still want to see it sometime.
I put that movie in and it would not play on my Xbox. It's a Blu-ray. I bought it on eBay, and I don't know if it's that Blu-ray's messed up or my Xbox or what, but it would not play. And so third time's the charm. We resorted to The Orphanage, which everyone enjoyed it, and it was a good movie, but it just was a bit upsetting that it wasn't what I wanted to show.
Yeah, I could tell you were getting pretty down on yourself after that had happened.
Yeah, I just had like a kind of a lonely last 2 hours prior, 'cause I came home from work early, and then I ended up just sitting by myself for like those couple hours, and what was supposed to be awesome turned into kind of like, oh, this isn't what I wanted. And then, so I was kind of in a headspace already, but that didn't help. But luckily the movie went well, and you guys were supportive, and you liked The Orphanage, which is good. But Dreamcatcher, movies, when you match the movie with the environment, I feel like it's so much better.
It is.
And
yeah.
We had got hit hard with snow, and I'm like, Dreamcatcher, even the opening credits to Dreamcatcher,
like
you see
snow-driven.
snow coming down on like the logos and stuff. It's really cool. I hate that nobody else likes that movie because I love it. But I think I have like this the script to it in a book form. Like they released the shooting script, and I have it. I just really like it. So I thought that there was a nice lead in there with us talking about movie nights. So
it's funny because you say like how perfect it is when something matches up with the movie you're about to show, be it like the weather, the time of year. Like we did a bunch of Christmas horror over the holidays. Well, my next movie for the movie night is going to be Friday the 13th part 2, which is going to be the second Friday the 13th movie night that we have, so it's all fitting perfectly.
Yes, that's awesome. And Friday the 13th part 2 is one of my favorites.
Oh, it's one of the good ones. Yeah.
I remember liking part 2 and part 4 a lot.
Part 3 not so much. The 3D was pretty cheesy. But
Yeah,
that was early
was.
implementation and everything.
And you know, being someone like me who went back to Friday the 13th to watch, I wasn't there when it came out, and I didn't follow it. I was in high school and I decided to go back. That the way that he found the hockey mask was super anticlimactic.
Yeah. If you were looking for some lore there, you weren't gonna find it.
Like if you were watching for the first time and he just picks up this hockey mask and starts wearing it, you're probably like, oh, like that's interesting. But for someone who knows him as the hockey mask wearing serial killer, and then for that to just happen, you're like, oh, okay. So unless you have anything else, what's your next movie?
All right, I'll close out this segment by saying my number 5.
Wait, aren't you on number 4?
I'm on number 5.
Oh.
Yeah, my number 4 was Texas Chainsaw.
I did 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I believe you should have. You were saying one led right into the other.
Okay, yeah, you went first, but instead you're going, okay. Sorry about that. Continue.
It's actually The Return of the Living Dead, and I love this movie. Made in 1985, directed by Dan O'Bannon, starring Clu Gallagher, Gulager, it's a pretty tough name to pronounce, as Bert, the medical supply warehouse owner, with some literal and figurative skeletons in the closet. James Karen as Frank, the supervisor of the warehouse, who causes OSHA trainers heart attacks during viewings of this film. Don Calfa as Ernie, the mortician that saves the day. Saves in heavy quotation marks. Also, and the immortal Miss Linnea Quigley as Trash, the punk rock sex machine man-eater turned undead punk rock sex machine literal man-eater.
And that's the costume you're working on.
Not hers. No, I'm not going to
okay.
go as Trash. There was another character named Suicide, which we'll see this movie long before Halloween, so you'll know like the aesthetic that I'm going for. But yeah, that's a couple months down the road, so I got time. But Toby Hooper, bringing him up again, was originally set to direct this movie. And there were plans to film it in 3D, but both of those never ended up happening. The entire film was shot in only 6 weeks. That's insane, if you know anything about shooting movies. The first zombie movie, this one, Return of the Living Dead, was the first one to portray zombies wanting to specifically eat brains. Before that, they just consumed flesh of any kind. They would just eat you. This would later gain popularity as almost every other parody involving zombies over the coming decades, you would see them muttering, brains.
Yeah.
It's all from this movie.
All right.
But yeah, that, I can't mention this movie without mentioning the graveyard striptease
Oh, God.
naked dance.
What am I getting into?
Oh, boy. When you finally get to watch this movie one day, yeah, I think you might have to hide your eyes during this scene. But that was one thing Linnea Quigley was known for. She was not only a scream queen, she would almost always go topless, at least, in some of the movies that she made. Except, strangely enough, Sorority Girls in Trouble in the Slimeball Bowl-orama, where she did not go topless.
Of course
but she ended up being the heroine of that movie. And I think her character's name was Spider in that one. And they ended up using samples from that movie in the Static X album, Wisconsin Death Trip. I know way too much about this stuff because I pieced it together over the years because I'm like, wow, where did that sound come from? And I ended up just figuring it out. But Return of the Living Dead, one of the best zombie movies not made by George Romero. And they do exist. I still love Night, Dawn, and Day. But if you're looking for something a little bit different, maybe something with a little bit more humor, check out Return of the Living Dead, and hell, check out the sequels. They're not bad either. But yeah, that's got to be my number 5.
That's another one I haven't seen. Go through your list real quick. How many of those have I actually seen?
Let's see. Number 1 was American Werewolf.
Nope.
2 was Pumpkinhead.
Nope.
3 was Evil Dead 2.
Yes.
So you're 1 for 3. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
And Return of the Living Dead.
Nope. So I've
you
seen
were
2 out of 5.
2
How
out
many
of
of
5.
mine have you seen? Urban Legend.
No.
Urban cuts with that. Scream.
Yes.
Dreamcatcher.
Yes.
Final Destination.
Yep.
And Behind the Mask.
Yes.
So you only haven't seen one of mine. So
Yeah.
so you win there. Kudos.
Champion!
Our closing thoughts. We'll close out on what, in your opinion, is the most underrated horror franchise.
Well, in my opinion, and I would say take my opinion with a giant
In
grain
your
of salt.
opinion alone.
But when I think of underrated horror series,
Wouldn't it be crazy if we had the same thing?
we will not.
Okay.
I guarantee it. But the first
Wait,
thing...
hold on. Is it Basket Case?
It is Basket
Oh my
Case!
god. I suddenly remembered me mentioning that
You
earlier.
knew it was coming.
You never came back to it, and I'm
No.
like, oh my gosh.
And it's perfect that you brought it up.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
love to tie it all together like
No.
this. The 3 films in this series First came out in 1982, second one in 1990, third in 1991. Written and directed by Frank Henenlotter, who also directed Brain Damage and... Can you guess what other movie? I mentioned it.
What? The Toxic Avenger?
No, that was Lloyd Kaufman.
I don't know.
Frankenhooker.
Oh, God. See, I was so successful in blocking that out of my mind.
I'll get you to watch that at some point. Maybe.
Can't wait.
But let me leave you with a quote from Henenlotter.
So, go ahead.
He was saying, "I never felt I made horror films. I always felt that I made exploitation films. Exploitation films have an attitude more than anything else. An attitude that you don't find with mainstream Hollywood productions. They're a little ruder, a little raunchier. They deal with material people don't usually touch on, whether it's sex, drugs, or rock and roll. And I don't know about you, but I love those subjects, so I love to watch a Henenlotter movie."
I don't know. I don't think that's really me. But, I mean, that's what film's about, right? You find what moves you.
Right. And I gotta say, I first watched these when I was like 13 or 15, somewhere in there.
I can't believe that.
I was always amazed when I talk with people about horror, and no one seems to have seen these films. The first one is pretty good. It's a little creature feature. But starting with the second film, it goes off the rails at warp speed. The special creature effects for the freaks are just amazing. The team that made these films wanted to work on almost everything after this film. Seriously. Let's do the list. Blade, Godzilla, Darkman, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Prometheus, Captain America, Logan, Star Trek, Pirates of the Caribbean, and even Terminator 2.
That's an epic track list.
Do yourself a favor and see where they got the talent. It all started with Basket Case.
I can't really argue that. So there you go. Is that all, or do you want?
That is the end of my rant.
Okay. So I'm not going to dwell on mine too long. We'll close this thing out. But I already talked about Final Destination. In my opinion, Final Destination is the most underrated horror film franchise. And I want to explain myself a little bit. I know it's obviously popular to a degree. And like I said, people will reference it when on a regular basis. Like, oh man, like that truck from Final Destination was passing me on the way here. But I feel like Final Destination is the most underrated horror film franchise, specifically when it comes to Comic-Cons and representation from the horror community. Final Destination gets a lot of credit from casual acquaintances, but never, ever do I see any representation of Final Destination at any conventions.
Do you think it's more because it's just like a gateway horror movie? Like it's maybe the horror snobs out there don't think of it as equal to the other series?
I don't think so. I think it's simpler than that. I don't think people actually dislike Final Destination in that sense. I think that it's... I don't want to I'm not bad-mouthing artists. I'm not bad-mouthing people at these conventions. If anything, I'm trying to get people to hear me and maybe do something about it. But I think what it is when you have a franchise that doesn't have a mascot, they don't have a serial killer, something to draw. I think that the easiest thing to do is skip over it. And I think that's why no artists draw any Final Destination art and you don't see any representation at Comic-Cons. It's because it's not something that's easy to come up with something for.
You know what would be great? Like, where we're recording right now is in Jesse's house, and we're in his room with a lot of his standees and statues and things. And I'm looking at some of these, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had these kind of figures? Like, I'm pointing at some Game of Thrones ones right now. But instead of the figures, it was like a standee like that, but it was a death shot. Like, it was how somebody died from Final Destination. You can have each one of the over-the-top kills as its own little standee.
As awesome as that is, that's not even something I've thought about. And I've thought about this a lot. So, like, that's a great idea. That's why I'm kind of like... And look, that's just you thinking about it for, like, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, obviously everyone can't just create figures. But, like... And, you know, not everyone's going to want to buy a piece of art that's someone being mutilated. But
I don't think Pop is going to get into that market anytime soon.
I'm not going to say any names. I just want to share my story, okay? There's an artist that I reached out to that does a lot of these horror conventions. And I asked him, I'm like, why don't you have any Final Destination art? He does art for, like, so one piece of art, an 11 by 17, will be for one specific movie. So he has a lot of art that's like, for the first Nightmare on Elm Street, second Nightmare on Elm Street, that kind of, and it'll encapsulate characters and Freddy, obviously, and then like some little montage
It'll be
stuff.
Like a collage, kind of.
Yeah, kind of like a collage for each movie. So I talked to him, and he's like, I don't know what I would do for Final Destination, and I was like, well, look, this is your style, right? So what you do is each movie has a different premonition, a different different thing that starts off.
Yeah, the main.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, so like the first movie, you have the airplane blowing up, and then put some of the characters around it, and then do some of like the character deaths.
I forget if it was like a piece of promotional art or something, but it was like Alex's face, and then half his face was like a skull.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, that's
I would love to have that. That's the movie poster?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like heavy shadows on the one side of their faces, and then in the shadows you vaguely see like their skull.
Yeah.
So it's it's really
do
cool.
Something like that, and then somehow work in to the shadows on them their death in the movie. Like for the one girl, you have like a little bit of a reflection of a bus. On Sean William Scott, you have like a little bit of like a train tracks or something like that. It's just little clues as to what we're gonna happen.
Well, like the thing that kind of it doesn't so much irritate me as it just genuinely, like, it bothers me a little bit because I feel like nobody cares. But I was like, look, I have an idea for you. And I told him what I just said, that I told him about what he could do. And I was like, literally no artists do anything for Final Destination. You're going to horror conventions where all these people love is horror films. And there's a market that's untapped with a really popular franchise that you could do a piece of art for, and they're not going to see it anywhere else, and they're going to buy it from you. So, like, from a business standpoint, it makes sense for you to do this art. Like, and he acted like he really liked my idea. I'm like, you can do one for each movie. Second one, have like the log truck that the logs come off and kill everybody, and just draw that in there, and then have the new characters and some of their shenanigans they go through in the movie, some of those deaths happening, and like you could do the roller coaster for the third one, and they'd be really iconic, and no one else does Final Destination art. And he acted like he was into it, and then he just never did the art. I still see him at these conventions. And he, I see his art. He never did it.
It could be one of those things, just like artist block kind of thing.
I feel like he just kind of never intended on making it, and he just kind of told me what I wanted to hear. Like, oh yeah, cool. But I'm like, it makes me feel like I'm crazy and nobody else likes the movie, or I don't know what it is.
You're not crazy, but I think what it is first of all, we can all be that guy to somebody else for a variety of reasons, and we don't really know it at the time, and to like look back years later, you're like, oh, maybe I was that guy. But then I would also say this, when it comes to that kind of stuff, that it seems like it's not popular at all, and it seems like the worst thing in the world to say, but if you throw characters from different franchises into it as like a weird mashup, I think it would reinvigorate the series. Like if you did an art piece with like Rick and Morty or something in like the Final Destination kind of movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would get people to like talk about Final Destination again. But you could do that with like almost anybody. Take the guys from like Shaun of the Dead and put them in like a Final Destination kind of thing. And I think it would be highly comedic.
Yeah.
But it could still be good.
I just don't get it. I think I'm just failing to understand if do other people just not like the franchise, or is it something that there's some other reason why it's not being represented? But it's not just one place. You know, Motor City Nightmares, there was nothing at Astronomicon. I go to Horror Hound all the time. I went to Horror Hound when Devin Sawa did his first convention appearance there, and I still didn't see any Final Destination art.
That's nuts.
Yeah. Like, I don't understand what's happening. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. And,
well,
like,
I still like the series.
Justin, my brother, was at a convention, Motor City Comic Con, I think, and he stopped by somebody's booth, and he was like, oh, like, that's a really cool idea. He was chatting with the artist about something, and he's like, oh, well, you should do this with Pikmin or something like that. And she loved the idea. She went out and made it and told Justin that she was going to, for him giving her the idea, she was really nice and genuine. She said she was going to send him the original for free and like to thank him for giving her the idea for the art piece. And she went out and made it, and it was that. And like, that's really cool. I'm not saying that I expect that, but I feel like my idea was at least worthy of some sort of movement.
Do you want to hear the good news?
What's the good news?
The good news is that we potentially reached hundreds or thousands of people today.
Thousands of people.
And of those thousands or maybe even millions of people that we reached today,
oh my gosh,
one of them is probably an artist. Look, and that person might be a fan of Final Destination, but just never thought to put those two things together.
Well, look, I will say this. If anybody is out there and still listening, we're what? Like, we're over 2 hours into this?
Yeah.
Like, I'm impressed already that you're listening to us for 2 hours. I think that's about it, right? Were there any closing thoughts?
I would just want to tell people these are our opinions, and if you don't agree with them, that's completely cool. I have plenty of friends that I don't agree with on plenty of things.
And one is sitting right here.
And yeah, he's sitting right across from me right now. But the great thing is, guys, we can all put our differences aside and still be civil. It's no reason to be an asshole to anyone. If you disagree about things, that's okay. But you can still be civil. So, hey, if you get into that Twitter argument tomorrow, maybe just put the phone down for a little bit. How about that? Maybe we can all just cool down a little bit before the corona takes us all.
And, that's a good closing thought. Mine is equally important. My closing thought is Club Dread. It's another really underrated film.
How are you going to work it in?
Broken Lizard. I don't understand how nobody else feels the same way about this movie.
To be continued.
And, no, it's going to be dropped here and done. But you know what? I told Jonas the other day, I Googled the killer from Club Dread. And I couldn't even find a picture of the killer from Club Dread.
That is pretty bad.
That's bad. I typed in the killer's name. I typed in Machete Phil. Couldn't find a picture. Like, I'm just at a loss. Look, if anyone wants to do any Club Dread art, I will be super impressed.
We might even pay for it.
I think Jonas and I are about ready to clock out of the night shift. So if you guys have any comments or anything else, please send them our way. We would love to know that somebody is listening out there or that anyone cares. It's lovely that you guys do.
And you can always find me. I go by Coffin Jonas on Twitter. That's at McKeever Jonas. You can find the Knife Shift podcast on Twitter now at Knife Shift. That's knife_shift. Feel free to give us a follow. We'll post any updates about our channel, our podcast, or general goings on. And if you want to get a hold of Jesse, well, you're just out of luck because he doesn't have really any social media to speak of yet, and we're working on that.
We're working on it. I don't have any Twitter or anything yet, other than Jonas and I share the Knife Shift, which I'm about to take lessons to learn how to navigate and respond properly to you guys.
We'll get you there. You'll be blocking people before you know it.
I have a YouTube channel. It's called Looking Glass Playthroughs. It's all one word jumbled together because I'm unprofessional. But I play stupid video games. And right now I'm playing Alice Madness Returns, which is actually a horror Alice in Wonderland. So it kind of ties in there.
It's pretty fun, actually.
But I love that game. You can get a hold of me through there if you really want. Otherwise, I'll work on this Twitter thing. But thank you guys for joining us.
And if you don't tune in to the next episode, we will come to your house and we will call your home phone with a voice changer.
Oh,
and we'll
man.
ask you, what are your top 5 favorite scary movies?
All right. Clocking out.
Bye, guys.